Good evening, model railroaders, and welcome back to the Second Section podcast, where it's just regular folks talking about model railroading. I'm your host, Andy Dorsch, and joining me this evening,
already.
the pre-show antics. That's why I'm laughing.
Antics. It was just stories.
Thinking about it.
It was.
Yeah, I'm like a little kid, and you can't talk to me about those types of things without me giggling like a little kid.
You never want to lose that, Andy.
Yeah.
Oh,
So joining us this evening, my co-host Mike Peekaboo Ostertag.
It's been a long 3 weeks. I tell you what, it
has.
We shouldn't have had all those beers before the show.
You know what? I had like half of a beer, and I'm like, man, this just does not taste good.
No,
No, it just didn't taste good tonight. This, I don't. It happens sometimes.
Sometimes you have that.
I tell you what, a lot's happened over the last 3 weeks. There's been a lot going on.
Yes, there has.
I went on a little trip.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
you were at the
Mike,
Rocky Mountain Trains show.
Did you happen to catch any of my antics from that, Mike? Yeah, you.
I don't think so.
No,
I was doing some live look-ins with the manufacturers from the Rocky Mountain Train show in Colorado.
I did see that. Now that you mentioned it. Facebook for me is like a flood. Like you can't imagine.
Ugh.
You know, it's like a deluge of input all the time.
Oh, I would imagine. You know, So yeah, that was a lot of fun. We'll have to cover that at one point.
We'll have a quick talk about Rocky Mountain and your exploits there, but I do want to introduce our guest this evening.
Does he need an introduction?
Yeah. There may be one or two
been on here now, Mike.
Well, I'm gonna get my free sub now, right?
No, you have one more to go.
You have one more. All right.
Oh, jeez.
So back with us for a fourth time on the Second Section podcast is Mike Rose. Mike, welcome back. It's great to see you.
Glad to be anywhere.
Yeah.
How you been?
Busy?
Yeah.
I've actually had a pretty good year. I mean, I have gotten a lot done, had a ton of fun, seen all kinds of interesting things. So it's kind of gone the way I like things to go.
Yeah.
That's
so
good.
No moss grows on the Rolling Stone. You're making progress still on the layout?
I hate to stop. I hate to think what would happen if I did.
You grow roots.
Just can't do that.
The world will start turning the opposite direction.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good for anybody.
Humanity relies only on you, Mike, and your layout. You know that, right?
You can rely on me.
Yeah. So you've been busy then. So let's so what have you been up to these days? You've been visiting friends, different model railroads, or working on the layout at a feverish pace. What's Mike Rose been up to since last time we talked?
I mean, I still work too. You know, I still have my
day job,
IT consulting company, and you know, fortunately, you can see the vestiges of it behind me there. I'm in the process of booting up an 18 access point Wi-Fi network that is going to go in a couple of weeks. So
wow!
By the time I get all 18 APs going in here, I'll probably get a 10 from the radiation. But it's just an example of the kind of stuff that we do. But because a lot of work is remote, and because I work out of my home office essentially.
Yeah.
My wife always kids me because I always say, well, I'm going to go downstairs, and she finishes the sentence. You're going to glue something, right? I said, yes. So a lot of what we do is sort of an iterative process, especially with structures and things like that.
Yeah.
You glue something, you clamp it up, you go upstairs, you do some IT stuff, you go back downstairs, you take the clamps off, you glue something else, lather, rinse, repeat. So I don't, in the course of a day, I don't waste a lot of time because there's always something interesting and fun to do. And I walk through the train room or rooms, I guess, to get to my office. So a lot of times it's an an attractive nuisance, and I it's not a direct trip to my office. It's very, at the very least, I'll go over to something I was working on the day before and just stand there and looking at it and going, and you get it in your head and you think about it a bit. It's kind of part of the process, I guess.
Yeah, so I suffer from the same affliction or the same excuse. But mine is, instead I'm going to go glue something, I'm going to go paint something, and and then
Same deal.
I'm down in the basement, I'm in the layout room, and I'm gone till it's time to go to bed. So
yep,
yeah. So but
not a bad way to spend an evening.
No, it's not. I really enjoy it. That's for sure, and kind of takes away the pains and strife of the work day, and kind of melts away when you're down here.
Like we were just talking about, and what I tell people all the time, it's supposed to be fun. And if it's not, you're not doing it right.
Yeah. I must not be doing it right then.
No. I think we just lost internet there for a second here.
I was going to say, Andy was like a deer in the headlights there. He froze up.
Well, are you getting weather down there, Andy?
Yeah, we are. We're right now here at the Ripon studio here for second section. We are getting some pretty nasty weather right now, but we're safe and sound down in the basement here. So if the internet power goes out, Mike Ostertag, you're going to have to carry the load there. So, but anyways, we're just basically, what were we talking about? I forgot now. So I think
busy.
Yeah, you were busy. We're off to a great start tonight. We had too many beers before.
Yeah.
So just to give a little bit of background.
Yeah.
Layout moves along. You go from one section to another. You're finishing sections, and a lot of that's covered in my model railroad hobbyist getting real column. It's usually about what I'm working on at that particular time that I'm writing the column. So some of the stuff we're going to talk about in the show involves the most recent article, which was me doing the Roundhouse area at Pittston.
Yes.
And I also sent you some photos of Pittston Junction, and the story, which is the opposite end of the yard. And the story of Pittston Junction was that I've been waiting to do the backdrop there for, I don't know, probably since maybe early fall. I had worked a little bit with Lance Minheim and a lot with Mike Confalone, getting the photos that I had taken there photoshopped and into a backdrop. And we get the backdrop printed up. And my buddy Mike C got really, really busy for a period of time. And the putting up of the backdrop thing got put off. So I busied myself with building a bunch of structures and things that I probably wouldn't have done if that hadn't been the case. And I'm kind of glad I did, actually. He eventually came down, and because he's Mr. Fussy, I said, bring your scissors. You're cutting this one out, So
yeah,
we don't get any second guessing about, well, you shouldn't have nipped that off, or you trimmed too close to this, or I just let him do the whole thing. He just sat there and cut it while I watched. And then me and him and my buddy Dave put it up in like 10 minutes using wallpaper paste, believe it or not.
Really?
Yep. It was something that Chris Adams, another friend of ours, had recommended, a particular kind of paste. And I've always used doubled up blue tape to do it, but it's not ideal. And under the right angle of the lighting, you can see lumps and things. And this is about a 12 or 11 foot long backdrop at Pittston Junction. So I really wanted it to look good, So we really, I kind of planned all of this out like the D-Day invasion, and I climbed up on top of the junction, and I had Mike to my left in the other aisle, and I had my buddy Dave on the right in the aisle I climbed up on the layout from, and I was ready for anything. Because we'd never used this wallpaper paste before.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It turns out it couldn't have been easier. We just put it on the wall, and it stuck, but it didn't grab, and you could just move it around and adjust it. And then I used a dry 5-inch paint roller, to just kind of smooth it out. Done in 10 minutes. I couldn't believe it. And then when we looked at it, we just thought, wow. So we've got some pictures to share of that. But
what was the name of that paste?
I don't know. I can't remember
It was
offhand.
just wallpaper paste.
Just
Well,
wallpaper paint, or is it like a
I mean, there's a
special?
million kinds. This happened to be a pretty good one, you know. I think I probably posted the name of it on on Crew Call, but I can also repost it on your group once I rediscover it.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That's a great idea.
And it just, you know, it held perfectly, and I couldn't believe how easy it was. I think of all of the, you know, 15,000 million little pieces of curled up blue tape I've used on my backdrops in the past, and I thought 10 minutes. Wish I had, you know, wish I had a redo on some of that stuff. So it was just really good to get Pittston Junction completed after that, which I did rapidly because it's not a gigantic area. And it was just really waiting for that backdrop. You know, there was no way I could have gotten up on the layout finishing Pittston Junction. So it was kind of like the obstacle to doing that. And I've actually moved on now to the Pocono Northeast, just to the right of that, you know. So
Yes.
it was a big deal to get that done. Going back to the Roundhouse, that was kind of like a debris field for a long period of time, like a long period of time, just bare plywood. And it had finished scenery all to the right of it. It was like the only unfinished section of Pittston Yard. And I was going to start something else. And Confalone actually said to me, why don't you just finish the Roundhouse areas? He said, then the whole yard will be done. And I thought, of course. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously.
Why not?
Sometimes you need somebody else to point out something that should have been painfully obvious. Cleared it all off and went at it, and pretty quickly realized, you know, building a curved, sloping, almost no 90-degree angles building is very different from all of the other structures you've ever built. So it was like a very interesting scratch building project, basically.
Yeah, that's so we have pictures of that to show as well. And then some of your exploits from around the world of model railroading.
Yeah, this March, I had agreed to go down and do a clinic at the Proto Meet in Malvern, which is always a really nice event. Those guys do a great job. Yeah. And I had missed the last one. It was basically a scheduling problem, and I think the one before that might have been COVID canceled or something. So it had been a number of years, maybe 6 years, I think, since I had been down there, and I decided to do my clinic on what I did in the past 6 years from where my last clinic there left off. So it was a pretty big clinic, and I put up on YouTube. A buddy of mine videoed it for me, so I put that up on my YouTube channel for people who couldn't be there that day or weren't able to go to the meet. It's the first time I had done that. So for anybody curious about that presentation, it's out there.
Yes, and I have your just so that everyone knows, Mike Rose's contact information. So his Facebook group for his podcast that he has, Crew Call with Mike Rose. I just put that into the chat. That's also in the show notes, as well as Mike's YouTube channel, where he's got a lot of cool run-bys and modeling demos, and now this clinic. So make sure you guys check that out. So make and tell him tell Mike that you heard him here on Second Section.
That's great. On the way down to Malvern, I had arranged to visit with Tony Custer. I'd never really been to his layout, even though I've known Tony for many years, and had done a couple of little pieces for his couple of his books back in the day. Super nice guy, very, very sharp guy. My favorite Tony Custer story was the very first clinic that I ever did, which was back in Cocoa Beach a million years ago. It was like, I think it was the first Cocoa Beach proto meet. And they had roped me into doing a weathering clinic down there. And bear in mind, public speaking at the time was something I avoided like the plague. And I'd never done a model railroad clinic before. So I happened to be in the model room, and somebody said, "Hey, Mike, is your clinic going to be starting soon?" I said, "Yeah, I guess I better get down there and set up." And when I left the model room and walked down the corridor to where the clinic room was, I saw like this knot of people, and I thought, oh, good, I'm not late. The other clinic must be just letting out. But no, that was actually people trying to get into the room. So I thought, oh boy. So I walk in the room, and I thought it was going to be like, dozen people, 20 people.
Yeah.
It was like 80 people. And I just thought, oh God, my first clinic, and I've got the sea of people in front of me. So I go up to the front table and I start setting up my stuff, because I was demonstrating stuff with oils and stuff with dull coat alcohol fading and some stuff like that, and I look up, and there's the crowd, and then I see this silver head sticking up above
There he
everybody
is.
else. And I said, oh my God, that's Tony Custer. He's at my first clinic. Great.
Yep.
And he's got that steely gaze, he's just looking at you the whole time, and I'm doing my thing. I just said the heck with it, here we go.
Yep.
And about maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes into it, I notice he's going. He's nodding. And I thought, well, that's probably good, and then, I did the whole clinic thing and all of that. And he comes up afterwards and introduces himself. Nicest guy, and
Really?
and
That's awesome.
And the rest is history, and I, went back upstairs and changed my shorts, and all was well,
Oh, that's fantastic. So you got to see Tony Custer's layout.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's seen pictures of it in all the magazines and all of that, but I find that layouts are very different when you see them in person.
I bet.
It's, when you, like all the magazine pictures, you're looking at it through this little window of whatever the composition of the photographer chose, and his layout is very, very conducive to that, because it's all these little scenes, that like it's built that way. But when you walk in and you see that, it's a long layout, his layout room is really long, and it's double deck. And honestly, I'd never seen in person an actual double deck layout, even though
Really?
mine is 2 levels, but at no time, I shouldn't say at no time, but for most of it, you're looking at either one or the other level. You're not really competing, with the 2 levels.
Right.
This is a full dyed in the wool, 2 level layout. So it was interesting to experience that, and just see how he did it and walk through the whole thing. And the guy's a fountain of information. If you could just, do a Vulcan mind meld with that guy, he'd be a good choice,
Oh man.
So that was interesting. And then I think the next day, I made some time to go over and visit my buddy Ken McCory. I've been to his place a bunch of times, but every time you go, it's different, because he's always doing stuff,
Yeah.
And you've got that link to show later of some of the stuff that I took pictures of there. He's just, the guy's 75, and just, you can't stop him, always very entertaining to visit with Ken. And I always get some takeaway from visiting him that makes me go, yeah, that's a good idea. I'll describe it a little more when we look at the pictures. I mean, some of it, like at one point, the 2 of us are literally laying on the carpeted floor of his layout, so we could see, so he could show me the latest things that he was doing down low under the layout, because his layout's, not big enough.
Wait, you said something maybe it was in the pre-show that Ken McCory's layout is the biggest you've ever seen?
Biggest private layout I've ever seen. Yeah. By far.
Wow.
By far. I mean, I've been to a few model railroad clubs that, I don't know, have I ever seen a model railroad club that big? I don't know. I mean, it's in a purpose-built building.
Yeah.
Have you seen it? Have you been?
No, I've heard about it. It's like it's an urban myth out here in the Midwest,
I like taking friends there sometimes. I took Scott Mason there one time.
Yeah.
Now Scott has seen and built a million layouts, so he's seen it all. And I thought, we'll see how he reacts to this. And I took him in there, and everybody's in there for about 10 minutes, and then they just get that stare, like they're just walking around like, oh my God. And I just let him, go away. And then I came back to him, and he was just standing there like that. And I said, I know it's a lot, because it is. It's it's stunning, really. Like you've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, hang on, buddy. It'll be okay.
You're right.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
He needs a crew of about, I think, 25 to 30 guys to run
Oh,
to do an off session.
Holy cow,
And I think
that
Tony
sounds-
said he needs 16. And for me, that's everything I want to avoid.
yeah.
I like
Yeah.
5.
I was
5 to
fortunate
5.
enough. I was fortunate enough this when I went to Colorado to go see John Parker's layout, and he said he needs like 18 to 20, and I'm like, no.
Wow.
When I built my layout, I wanted a layout that I could run with a group of friends, or that I could run by myself, or run with my buddy Dave, who comes over periodically. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what I ended up with.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's outstanding. So let's start diving in to the Pittston, I guess the Pittston Junction, if you wanted to.
I don't care. I know the material.
You know the material. Okay. Because I thought this was really, really good. And it was great to kind of show how you went from, I guess, kind of decomposing or starting from scratch and then kind of making it really an awesome, I guess, prototypical scene here. So let me do the yield screen share.
Okay.
Now, is this stuff prototype in nature, or is it fictional prototype, or
100%.
what is it?
100% prototype.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I mean, I know you modeled a prototype, but I didn't know if this was the.
It's whenever possible. I mean, I'm modeling 1984, so sometimes you have the blessing or the curse of lack of photos, right?
Right.
Anything I find in my era is gold to me, as long as it's not
yeah.
after I built it. I don't like to find photos of things that I had to wing certain aspects of it and find out it's not quite right. But I haven't really run into much of that. Okay,
Right.
Pittston Junction. So here's what it looked like for a long time. The little block of wood there, I don't know if you can pick it out there, the little redwood colored block of wood, that's the Pittston Yard Office. And
Oh, nice.
on the left, the two tracks are the Conrail main line, the mountain cutoff, the former Lehigh Valley mountain cutoff. And the track just to the right of the little building is Conrail's Taylor secondary. And they put that in to connect from the yard on the left to the Taylor secondary, which is the former DLW. And that kind of slopes down on the layout and goes under the mountain cutoff, way down where the fast and final spackle is down, way down there.
Yeah.
To the right is my interpretation of the P&E. It's a little bit different from the prototype, and it's mainly because of space constraints and radius constraints.
Sure. So the P&E is the Pocono and Northeastern.
Pocono Northeast. Yep. And
Yep.
it's one of my favorite jobs on the railroad, actually, because they have some of their own track. They ran all over Conrail. They ran all over the D&H. There's at least 4 different jobs that we run. And I think it's the one thing on the layout. I might be the only guy who actually fully understands it.
And so at the top left of the picture here, this is what we talked about on the last show, wasn't it? With the depth, the scene with the depth. Correct?
That's probably true. Since I can't remember what I had for breakfast, I'll take your word on that. But that sounds right.
Yeah. And then the DL.
That's Duryea down there. That's the auto junkyard.
Yes.
The flyover down there. The trestle.
Yep. Okay. So this is what we have to work with here. So it's basically a beautiful Y that we have set up, and a lot of, it looks like florist foam. Here.
Yeah, that's my friend.
So now this is the next one that we have here.
Yeah, so I took some scaled pictures and put them on that wooden block, and that was my stand-in for a while.
Okay. So so basically just printed out. I mean, this is a pretty good stand-in, right? You have the.
Yeah, I mean, it was there for a long time. Yeah, those pictures are from my era, and were taken by someone. I mean, they were gold to me, because it actually shows what it looked like in the early 80s.
Yeah.
So this won't be linear, but that's okay. So there's Confalone in my dining room cutting out the backdrop. We just kind of opened up the dining room table, and you can see that there's multiple copies of it. So when you have something printed up, you've got the width of the roll, and they're happy to put multiple passes of the Photoshop photos on the roll for you. So if you mess one up or something happens, you know what I mean, you've got an extra on there. So I was able to get, as you can see, several strips usable on there. But what we typically do is cut out the sky portion so that we're putting the backdrop itself onto the existing painted wall. In this case, Mike elected to leave certain telephone poles and things sticking up, and he cut around them. So that cut that you see on the top is just kind of like a first trim, and then he went in with some finer scissors, I think, and did a lot more finer cutting of it. And it's one of my least favorite things to do, so I was very happy to let him do that.
So let's just stop for just a second here. So how did so you stitched together a bunch of photos on Photoshop? Now
there's actually a story behind that. So
yeah,
and everything kind of like is all tied together. So you remember I was talking about going down to the Malvern meet and how it's one of my favorites. So apparently, might have been on the first Malvern meet that I did. There was a guy in my clinic who I didn't know at the time, and he was a Reading and Northern engineer. And apparently he'd been following my work, and he was on crew call. And at one point when I talked about I was going to start making Pittston Yard, I got an IM from him, and he said, if you'd like a tour of the yard, I can arrange that for you. And I looked at that IM and I thought, would I like that? Yes, I would. So to make a long story short, it turns out he was a great guy. We clicked immediately. I went down there with a couple of friends of mine, and we did the whole yard tour thing. And on that first tour, I was taking pictures from the Y, like not just to the left of where we saw that little mock-up of the yard office. And as it turned out, that was the right perspective to get those house pictures to view a backdrop up on the wall from the aisle. So had I not been able to take the pictures from that vantage point, they just wouldn't have looked right. So I took all of the pictures. I think I might have had a tripod, as I recall. And Mike took the pictures. I'm trying to think now. I think I stitched them together in a preliminary sense, just using the Photoshop auto stitch function. And what I don't know about Photoshop would fill a very large volume. And then I think Lance Minheim helped me bring some of it to the foreground, because you had sort of an arc because you're taking them all from one spot. So he helped bring those to the forefront. And we were using so many different photo editing programs, I couldn't even tell you which one we used to actually do that function. But then that went up to Mike, and Mike did the colorization, and he took a lot of the photos and he flipped them and added them on, and then he would take out certain buildings and fill them in here and there to cover up the seam, and we ended up with this big long, probably twice or more than it would have been with just using the houses that I took, and that's why we needed my table to cut it out.
So did you have a backdrop producer or manufacturer do this, or did you just take it to a print shop?
Well, I had done the take it to a print shop thing before. Mike, as you know, used to publish a magazine, and he still publishes books, and he used a printer in Pennsylvania, and he kind of insisted that I use that printer.
Sure.
And later you'll see why, because the colors are just spectacularly spot on.
Wow. So there it is.
Backdrop in place. It just kind of takes that wall and just opens it up. And more importantly, when you're switching at the junction or taking photos or whatever, I mean, those are the views you get from that spot. I've had Reading and Northern employees say, "Wow, I've seen that view, from the cab a million times." Which is what you want to hear.
So this looks amazing as is. So if I were to direct this a bit, you had one person over here on the left hand side, one person on the right, and then you were on top of the layout in the
Right.
middle.
I put a sheet of 1-inch foam up on top of there and just clambered up on top of it.
Wow.
And then so let's talk about the application of the wallpaper paste then. So
All
it's
right.
just
So
so
off
basic.
to the right,
Yeah.
which we don't have a photo of, is where the Pocono Northeast section is going to be built. And I put down a sheet of a narrow, like a 2-foot sheet of plywood there.
Yeah.
That was going to be sort of like my wallpaper board. And we just had the photo upside down on it, and I used a nice 4-inch brush and just brushed it onto the back of it, just sliding it down. I mean, it's a big long thing, so it's helpful to have lots of hands on it at that point. And then at the right time, Mike went into the aisle on the left. I handed him that end, and we just kept sliding it more in and putting more paste on. And when the whole thing was pasted, I hopped up on top. My buddy Dave has got the right-hand side of it, and I had Mike line it up with the spot on the left where it needed to start, which is basically where that wall kind of angles off into that Duryea section that we were talking about.
Right.
So it needed to start right at that portion of the wall. The concept being the photos on the backdrop should be like a continuation of some physical houses that were there.
Wow.
And boy, until you get the thing up, you just cross your fingers and you hope for the best. But we lit it, and then we just put it on the wall.
Yep.
And just kind of got it in place where we wanted it, make sure it was lined up properly and all of that. If you look way over to the right, you can see a little bit of blue under the photo backdrop, bottom right hand corner. So later, after it was up, I just kind of treated that with a little bit of foam and some paint in that area, and that took care of that. But once we got the thing on the wall, I just took a dry paint roller and just rolled it to make sure there weren't any bubbles. That was it. And I'm not kidding when I said it took 10 minutes.
That's amazing.
I couldn't believe it. Got off the layout, we stood there and looked at it, and like as a group, we all just kind of went, wow.
And how long is that all? How long was that?
I think it's about 11 feet.
That's crazy.
And there's no ripples,
Nothing.
nothing.
Nope.
That's insane. I would have creases all over that thing, I think.
You'd be surprised. Now, part of it is the thing is printed on a very high quality substrate. The paste was great to work with. The wall was really smooth. It just all kind of worked.
Yeah, I mean, so there was a quality, element though here too. You didn't cheap out. You went with the higher quality materials for the print paper and the
that
glue.
sheet that you saw in that length with all of their backdrops was $400 and something.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not nothing. But on the other hand, what did I get out of that? I got 11 times. I got like 55 feet of backdrop out of it. Big. So if you look way over to the left in this photo, you see the real trees.
Yes. And
you see the color on the trees in the background. I mean,
it's seamless. Yeah.
But see, that's what Confalone does. I call him Mr. Fussy because he's very fussy about color. So if you're trying to get something right, you sub that out to him. You just say, make this right. He does.
Yeah, right. He does all the color correction for you on the trees and the shade. Yeah.
He's going to build a drop aisle bridge. I go up.
Yep. There you go. Very good. So this is another view of that backdrop from the rails.
That looks insane.
There's your cab view, Mike. What do you think?
Oh, that's crazy.
Look at this.
Excuse me. You can't even see the seam where the backdrop ends and the regular wall begins.
That's the idea.
Wow.
So
that's phenomenal.
That's my phone just, at the throat of Pittston Yard looking into Pittston Junction.
This is incredible.
That looks really cool.
I think this is a fantastic shot. Wow. I can't get over it because it looks like you're really there. I mean, with the sign detail, and David Winter's got a comment here. He said this is why photo backdrops are the best.
That's not a Bob Ross, Andy.
No, I mean, I got a painted one behind me, but I mean, if that in front of us right there, that's really, really good.
And this is why, I mean, I really needed to use a good quality photo backdrop like that to get some depth to the scene, because otherwise that scene, which is kind of a pivotal area, just ends in a billboard. You know what I mean? That it needed to not look like that.
So like take us or give us an idea, like how long in the making was this backdrop? Like was it just something you guys did in an afternoon, or did it take a couple weeks, couple months to get everything right before you even went to the printer?
Well, I mean, multiple steps, right? So the picking out the photos, that was easy because I took them and I knew what I wanted. And then like I said, I used the Photoshop thing to stitch them together, and that took like 5 minutes. Well, it took 5 minutes once I was able to beat Photoshop into submission. It's miles,
There is a bit of a
I'm
learning.
with you. I am a Photoshop novice.
It's a career, and that's not. I mean, I'm on computers all day. Do I want to spend more time on the computer? I do not, So I'm not able to really get good enough with Photoshop by using it all the time. So I'm happy to defer to people who know what they're doing. And that's why I talked to my buddy Lance, because if anybody doesn't know Lance Minheim, I'd be surprised. But Lance is a professional model railroad builder, and he's done tremendous stuff with photos. And he's the one who was able to flatten it out, basically. Once I gave it to Mike, a couple of iterations. So David's asking, how did we get the scale? So I don't think I have a picture of this in the presentation, but I had printed out just on my color laser a couple of or three, maybe 8.5 by 11 prints. And I was scaling the prints, which you can do just by controlling the print size and however you're printing it. But I did a bunch of iterations of that until I got the resulting printout house to look just like the house that was real next to it. And there's certain things you can go by, like doorways are a good thing to go by, because most doorways are 6'8", right? So
yep.
You can match that up. I was up here in my office with the scale rule, and I print something out, measure, and go, nope, need to reduce it by 10%. But once I got that on the wall, I had something to go by. So then, when Mike put it all together, he has a way of using Photoshop to change the scale of it. So then I would print out a section of it, and I literally just pasted it over my existing. The thing that I had printed up. And when I got it to the point where it fit exactly, I knew we had the right size of the big backdrop. So a little trial and error, but it really only took 3 or 4 tries. It wasn't like a big deal. And once we had the scale of it right, we just send the file down to the printers, and a couple of weeks back to me in a giant mailing tube.
Well, go ahead, Andy.
No. I was not going to say anything value added. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I just wanted to know, like, all the houses are in perspective, right? On the backdrop, they all, for the most part.
Yep.
How are you? Excuse me. How are you able to maintain that? Because obviously, if you're stitching photos together, you're moving. Were you moving linearly along, like parallel to the houses while you took those photos? Or were you like panning while you did that?
So the way Mike told me to do it was, he said, set up a tripod, use a normal lens, like a 50mm lens, and he said, don't move the tripod and make sure you get overlap. So that got me the houses in an arc, and then Lance and I used the tool to bring that arc flatter,
Make
And
that
then,
Q tool or whatever it is, right? The
we used the skew tool when we were doing the pictures for the mock-up on Pittston Junction, because that photo was taken at an angle. It's not a skew tool, it's something else, and I couldn't tell you what they call it. But that flattening process helped a lot. And then I think Mike's got a way of taking, like he would take a house and cut it out in Photoshop and then put it somewhere else. And that gives him the ability, because it's on a different layer, for him to sort of rotate it a little bit.
to do this with everything, right?
Yeah.
Kind of.
It's definitely some hocus pocus there for sure.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that, like, I've taken photographs of, like, tree lines over a cornfield or over like a soybean field.
Yep.
And that's one of the hardest things that I've always tried to do, because you take a picture here and it looks perfectly fine, and then you want to get that overlap, but to make sure that you stay equidistant to where you were in the previous photo.
Right.
I've always found that to be really, really tough.
So my recommendation for like a tree line backdrop would be, don't worry about taking that many photos of it. It's a tree line. Take like 4 or 5 photos and then just flip it and duplicate it and keep going with it.
Oh.
You'll never be able to tell.
Yeah, that's what I did with my first backdrop that I had behind me when I had that photo. I basically was out fishing one day in the North Woods, and I just, with my phone, I just took like 4 or 5 different photos and then started stitching them together.
Yep.
But I made the horrible mistake of printing out 24 inches of backdrop and trying to paste that up here with Super 77, and there was much weeping and gnashing of teeth.
No, as a matter of fact, before we did the wallpaper paste thing, I had some remnants left over from other backdrops, and I tried several different things. I tried 77, and made sure I was using like a piece of painted sheetrock. I wanted to use the same substrate, and it worked, but it can be messy if you're doing a big area with that. And plus it's very grabby, so you have to be super precise about how you get it on there. Using this wallpaper paste, you just put it on there, move it around like you want, and then it's just there. So, and some of this R&D was because up at Mike's, we're going to be doing an even longer backdrop that's a full 2 feet high. It's got the full sky, because it's a paper mill and it's got all the wisps of steam and all of that stuff. So it's a full height 2 foot backdrop. And frankly, all of us were scared of doing that one until we did this one. And then we thought, yeah, we could do that.
Good luck. Oh man. And I'll never put up a backdrop by myself again. You
got to have a lot of hands. This view is just me. The area, where you see the little shrubs and the grass, and down in the back, it's just way down. You see the tree line way down. So that's the tree line that kind of screens out where the P&E disappears to. That's really all that shot is. And that shows my little 3D printed road gate there. I couldn't wait to put that in place.
Yeah. And again,
although when I was down in Malvern, a former Conrail engineer said, that's supposed to be yellow in your ear, so it's yellow now.
Good. We need to be accurate.
Absolutely.
Oh, here's a cool shot.
Yeah. So this drone shot now is it's basically done with the exception of the little yard office, and the greenery in the front really is what's there when you look at it from the other side. So, but I kept it on the low side so that if we did have to reach in, we're not reaching down into a hole. So it's probably, I don't know, maybe 3-inch high greenery there. But again, really, you can cool see shot. Like over to the right, the real trees and the backdrop trees, it's just dead on.
Yeah, the color matches. It's seamless. If you didn't know what you were looking at there, Like if you were to zoom in, right?
Yeah, it's hard to tell where it begins and ends.
Right, exactly. Which is if we just, get in real close here, that's
Right.
fantastic.
Right. That's partly what makes it so convincing. And if
Yeah.
you were to look at the entire backdrop, you'd see some duplication of houses in it, but the houses themselves are, they're mostly all one or two colors, and none of them really, they're a little bit on the nondescript side, which is very typical of houses in that area. So you don't notice the duplication of it.
Well, now I'm gonna look. It's like a magic eye photo.
Yeah, where's Waldo?
Yeah, right. There you go. Oh wow.
And that's a lump of ballast covering a switch machine that I installed on top of the bench work, or rather recessed into the bench work.
So is this, we got a tortoise under there or like a servo?
No, I'm using these little, what are they? They're Polish or Czechoslovakian little servos that are great.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to take the spring out of my Picos to use them. They've got enough oomph to throw the Pico.
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that pile of ties, another guy told me, is right over where there's a sign right now, and I guess that was part of the mine disaster that happened in Pittston back in the late 50s, and there's a plaque there today.
Oh my gosh.
Holy cow.
That's great detail to the scene, though. Those ties look realistic.
Those are actually old ties that I scraped up when I was doing renovations, and I saved them.
There you go.
Well,
that's a good little tip.
idea. There's a good idea.
Better
view.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
So the whole scene really is just a matter of adding more and more detail over time without making it too busy.
Yeah. So
I decided, well, if the old mock-up of the yard office is the last frontier, it's time to make the real thing. So this is just a exploded view of how I'm laying out the actual sides of the yard office. It's all styrene, of course, and the windows were the trickiest part. I had to use like parts of certain windows and orient them differently and remove panes and what have you to get what I was after.
So yeah, so just your classic evergreen styrene, and then a couple of bits and bytes here, and had to modify them to get what you want. And
very, very careful cutting, because the windows sit within the cut. There's nothing overlapping to cover the seam, so the cuts have to be basically perfect.
Yeah.
Wow.
I always love watching people scratch build structures.
And that's just like a preliminary coat of an underlying concrete color. These are the little brick windowsills that I made. I cut them out of something. It's not easy to find bricks laid up like that on
Oh
like
wow.
everything is just like a running bond, and to get them like this, I had to really comb through my scrap bin to find some bits that had this.
Those almost look like little pieces of a DPM kit of some sort.
I think you're right. I think they were resins. Yep.
Yeah, because they used to have those little arched windows that had that on the sill.
That's where I got them. Thank you. I had forgotten where I got those.
Good eye, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay.
And that's my roofing material. A lot of people ask me about this. Yep, it's masking tape.
I was gonna say, is that masking tape?
Yep.
That's really good. So just now, did you just use the strips of it, or did you cut it special, or is it just?
I used the strips. I overlapped it half, and then I sprayed it with flat black camo.
Really?
Did you have to do anything with at least one edge that was the overlapping edge, so that you didn't have that fuzzy?
No, the only thing you see there is the pencil line to get me to start it right, and then after that, it was just a matter of following the edges.
Wow, that's awesome.
I'm gonna have to
we're stealing that one.
We're stealing that.
It took like 5 minutes to do. I kid you not. You do it long, and then you flip it over and take a razor blade and just cut off the edges.
Yeah, that one's getting stolen.
Yeah, we're stealing that one, and that's the finished product.
Yeah. So in this view, I've done another coat of the concrete color on the bottom for the foundation, masked that off, and then I did a sponge, and the roof isn't glued on here. I used the sponge paint technique to get the white onto the sides of the building. Basically, that's a stucco building, and in the prototype pictures, it had a little bit of a model look to it with some of the concrete color showing through.
It almost looks like you used like a black undercoat with a white over it and use that crackle material. You know what I mean? That stuff that makes the paint crackle.
Yeah, I didn't do any of that. I just used I took the scissors and just cut a 1-inch square of old kitchen sponge and did it with that in about 2 minutes.
That's awesome.
And that's just regular like craft paint from Michael's.
Yeah, Michael's, the old tube. Okay.
A lot of people ask me about this chimney. I could not tell you, if my life depended on it, where I got that chimney. It was just in the detailed parts box. But I looked at it and thought, this looks just like my chimney. And I just drilled a hole in the end of it. I mean, I cut it to the right height, drilled a hole in the end of it and put the smoke jack. And then I used some spackle to build up the sort of the mortar at the top, like you see on the prototype photo.
So like you're using like fast and final then
Fast
for
and
something
final,
like
exactly. And I use that to grout the bricks too.
Yeah, you know what? I just used that. I would have never thought to have used that on my Pine River Wood Products building that I just built. Boy, does that work slick.
It's great stuff. I also build roads with it. I take it and mix it with colored what is it? Powdered pigment for paints. It's tempera paints, I think. And that's what I do all my asphalt roads with. Or concrete.
Yeah. I mean, I love it.
Where do you find that stuff? It's called Fast and Final?
Yeah.
Home Depot.
Yeah, Home Depot. It's made by DAP. You get it in the paint section.
Exactly.
It's wherever your drywall stuff is. The road that I have here, and I stole this was a Mike Rose tip off of his podcast. That's where I got this tip from. I never leave home.
Consistency of mousse.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I never leave home without it.
But don't.
Yeah, don't eat this stuff. But it works great. Roads, mortar, and it cleans up really easy too.
Really easy. Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
So that's a pike stuff stairway, but on the prototype it had overhang on the steps and the landing. So I'm just adding styrene here to get that same effect.
So you're adding all the prototype elements then.
Yep, and these are the awnings that from Monster Model Works that Jimmy Simmons makes. Very unique product. For this particular prototype, it didn't have the overlays on the sides, just on the tops. So you could probably see some green putty there used to fill the holes on the sides.
And there they are done.
Just kind of fold them up.
That's pretty slick.
That looks. Now, did you paint? Now, I dare to ask. Did you paint those red and white or no?
Well, no, that's not what the prototype was. So you'll see.
Oh,
there's a reveal coming.
There's a reveal.
So there it is with the windows and the little window sills and the steps in place. And there it is with the awnings painted white. The air conditioner was a who makes that kit? It's just a plastic kit, but had almost no detail to it. And then I cut out the picture from the prototype photo of the end of the air conditioner and just glued it on there.
Yeah.
And the same thing on the sign. That's from the prototype picture and just put onto a thin piece of plastic and then glued onto the building. So at this point, the building is there, but it doesn't have any personality yet.
No. Oh, here we go.
Oh, here we go. Yep.
So the prototype, I followed all of the prototype rust streaks from the picture that I had.
Nice.
Oh, so now you have it in the mud?
Yep. Yeah, that was that just rained look photo that you probably saw me post there. Yeah.
That's really cool. The vehicles, I love those.
Another friend of mine, Blair Davies, actually made a few of those for me. He's
Oh wow.
a gifted truck modeler.
Boy, that staircase really turned out really good.
It needed the relief of the overhangs to look right.
It did. So how did you, I guess, plant this building then? So I'm seeing, you have the scenery come right up to the side of it.
I mean, you have to, right? It's got to
Yeah.
look planted. There's really two ways to do it. Now, the way I put down that the parking lot material, it's a custom grout mixture that Confalone did for me because I liked his. And you just put it down dry. You roll it out with a little wallpaper seam. Is that wallpaper thing again? A little wallpaper seam roller. And then I just mist it with a 50-50 alcohol and water mixture, and it dries. If I was doing this again, I think I would I would just do it in the whole area and then stick the building right into the mud. I had to be very careful about how I did this up against the existing building. Problem was the building kept moving because it's very, very light. And as I would brush the mixture up against it, it would move and screw up what I did on the other side. So I ended up taking a 1, 2, 3 block and just putting it on the roof of it just to hold it down so I could brush it everywhere I want. And then I just kind of used a piece of styrene to screen out the building while I sprayed the area with the alcohol water mixture.
Oh, that is super cool. I love this picture. I love this, how this scene is turning out.
It kind of just completed the whole scene.
Yeah, so Heath from Humanity Junction's asking if you would be so kind as to do his scenery on his layout.
Well, everybody's got their price. Depends where you live.
I think he lives in Manhattan. So if you're looking to go downtown someday,
I have to charge double for that. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. So let's keep boogieing here because we got more. We got a roundhouse to get to. Look at this.
That looks awesome.
Yeah. Nice details there.
Makes it.
What's that?
The chimney just makes it.
Yeah, it does.
So I took that particular photo because it's from the angle that the prototype photo was taken from. You might have seen it on Crew Call. I was able to position the two photos such that you could kind of A/B it,
Yeah, right.
I don't know if I said, there it is.
There it is. So there it is. There's the old or the model, and then there you go. There's the prototype.
That looks really cool.
That's awesome. So
that's
that
prototype modeling, and if you find a photo like that, that's just, that whole building is gone now. They wiped it out and built a much more modern structure there. So I was very, very lucky to get that. But I should also point out that the same R&N engineer, a friend of mine, was kind enough to take very accurate measurements of every aspect of that building for me.
Really?
So that building is built to exact scale.
Now that is awesome. So there was a legitimate question here from Heath at Humanity Junction. So do you use primarily oil paints, or is that a combination of oils and acrylics?
Well, yeah, it's everything. So I think the substrates on this building are all acrylics, polyscale and craft paints and things like that. I think I don't know if I sent the photo that I probably would have pointed that out on, but once I had the white paint sponge painted onto the model, I then took the concrete color and dry brushed it in certain key spots based on what I was seeing in the prototype photo, which helped to soften sort of the splotchy effect of it, and that's when it started to look right to me. And then the rust streaks on the awnings are strictly artist oils right from the tube.
Yeah, sure. That's awesome. And then one other question here for Why Run Naked 4. Was that a former Lehigh Valley property?
Yeah, that was Coxton Yard, which got renamed in Conrail days because they also had Croxton Yard in New Jersey. So when Conrail took over, they renamed it Pittston Yard, and the LV guys have been pissed about it ever since.
Yeah, railroaders don't like it when other railroads rename your stuff.
No,
No.
we didn't like it when CSX took over Conrail here. We still don't.
Well, I don't like it. I mean, Conrail was one of my favorite railroads too. So, but let's keep cracking on here because there's this Roundhouse that we got to talk about. It's
Yeah, that's kind of originally what we were going to talk about, right?
Yeah, and then I made us talk about the old Pittston
No, that's
yard
okay
office.
because they're really the opposite ends of the already done Pittston yard. So that was kind of the cool thing about it. So
Yeah.
the Pittston Roundhouse. This is right off the internet, as you can see. It probably Google Maps because that allows you to measure distance. You can see where the Roundhouse used to be. A lot of it's gone, and there was a big fire in that Roundhouse at one point prior to my modeling era. They were storing tires in there, and there was a fire that took, I guess, a long time to put out because you know how tires are. They just got to kind of burn out, and it was enough really to destroy a reinforced concrete roundhouse. So this kind of a picture is very, very useful because, as you'll see as we get along, what's going on the roof is interesting. The proportions that help you determine the arc are very, very useful.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's a roundhouse segment is very useful because I did not have room for an entire roundhouse.
I mean,
when we get to the Tony Custer pictures, you'll see why.
Yeah, right.
Look, can you go back just a second, Andy?
Yeah, absolutely.
So behind that roundhouse segment, you'll see there's like another structure off the back of it. And that figures prominently into what I modeled as well. So basically, a little bit shortened up, maybe by a stall or so. That's what I ended up modeling and built. In Conrail days, the pit was filled in, and obviously the tracks are all gone now. But in my era, there were a couple of tracks that went into the roundhouse and through it into that back shop. So you'll see that as we move along.
How many stalls was the original roundhouse? Do you know?
I really don't know, but it was a lot.
Had to be massive. Right. I mean, you can just see how, like, if you look at this,
at least 20, right? At least 20 stalls.
Yeah, this was a major facility for LV during the steam era, and in fact, in that area on the other side of the main line, like top right hand corner, I've been told and had pointed out that was a big hump yard up there, which was long gone by my era.
And then are those switch engines burned out?
So this facility, they're actually not burned out. They're sort of in primer. And those were there, believe it or not, when I took my yard tour back in the day. I don't really know how old the satellite view is, but RMDI, which was like a locomotive rebuilding and I think maybe leasing company, used to use a couple of stalls in that roundhouse to work on their projects. And there was RMDI junk all over the property when I went there. Those are SW1500s, I think.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And those are the two stalls that they were using on the right there. So this photo showed me a lot of detail. It shows the sort of the crumbling of the concrete and how it's reinforced on the columns between. Shows you the metal what would you call that? I guess protectors, that are down low on each stall. Shows you what the roll-up doors look like and the louvers up top, and it also helped me to begin trying to scale this thing out and get it to look right.
Yeah, there's
I took that photo on my yard tour. Pretty sure.
Wow. Nature's trying to reclaim it.
Yep. Now here's an old picture that that some of the historians, another Reading and Northern guy, Ed Philbin, who's a real genuine railroad historian, had come up with some useful photos for me. This showed me the structure largely intact, and especially the side of it there. How it's the stucco look and how that brick building is on the right. notably, you can see sort of, I don't know what you call that part of it, but it's like at the crown of that brick end, you can see how it's sort of squared off and sticking up quite a bit.
Yep.
That got changed at one point, and I had to model it differently for my era, as you'll see coming up.
You can still see the roundhouse, the turntable ring there in that photo too, if
Oh,
you
yeah.
look real close.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's a cool shot.
So that's the area in question. That was sort of my starting point. So after I cleared all the debris and just piled up locomotives and everything there, I took the cork down to the plywood level. And you have to remember that underneath here is my staging yard. Allentown Staging Yard is underneath the full length of Pittston Yard. This is a 22-foot long curved structure that got moved from the old basement into the new addition. So you'll notice that there's some area to be removed there, and you can see how it crosses a white circle there.
Yeah.
That's a bolt. That's
Oh no.
Yeah, that's a bolt and a threaded rod and a big nut on it. So had to deal with that.
How did you get around that?
Well, what I didn't want to do here, because as you can see at the very top left there, this is a finished scene. I didn't want to get in there with a router and throw chips all over the place.
Yeah.
So, and I apologize that I don't know which photos are in here as compared to which photos made it into the article. The article is a very detailed step by step on how I did all of these steps, and is worth looking at.
Yeah.
But I ended up using a what do they call it? It's some kind of little Japanese saw that's flexible to make the side cuts, and then I chiseled it out with a good chisel. And my goal was to not go all the way through to the staging level. I just wanted to make enough room for the inspection pits that were part of the Walther's Roundhouse.
Ah, okay.
That I know we'll see coming up.
Yeah, here, let's go to the next one then.
So here I've taken pieces of the inspection pits, and I've cut them and glued them together to match the angle that I need to reproduce here. And as you can see, they're positioned over the part to be chiseled out. So the way the kit is, that's the floor, and you lay the rails in those grooves, but then they have the separate pits that you glue on from underneath. That's how I determine the width of the area to be chiseled out. But just getting it to flare out like that, how I wanted it, was not straightforward. In this picture, the pits are in place and obviously chiseled out. I've filled in the rest of the flooring with styrene.
Oh yeah, and you got the inspection pits in, and
right, a little more filling in of the little bits behind the concrete, but that's largely the floor now. And I'm using styrene tubing basically to do a lot of the superstructure for this roundhouse. I basically built it just like the prototype, except using plastic parts. It was actually a lot of fun to build this, but again, it's an arc, it slopes, and it flares out. Other than that, it was no problem.
Yeah, it's just a real simple geometry problem there.
Right?
It was blowing my mind. I basically figured out the arc on the front first, which helped me do the back. And then I had good pictures of the side. And I figured once I had the side figured out, it was just a matter of putting that framework in place. But the front was very interesting to build because that had to look right. You really see a lot of that.
Yeah, that really turned out. I mean, just from the structure wise, it looks nice, and it looks like you could probably tap dance on top of it. How it's engineered.
Oh yeah, no, it's very structural, no question about that. So at this point, I've skinned it and added the overlays, which gives you that. I mean, it's basically a curtain wall kind of construction. The walls were made of brick, I later found out, and then just stuccoed over that, which is why it looks like that in the prototype.
Okay.
But everything in the front is all just poured and reinforced concrete.
Now, let me ask you this question here. So I see you got the back shop is, I guess, put in.
Yeah, that's part of a Walther's kit, and I shortened it up to fit my space because immediately behind that is the aisle that we go through with the the big steel swing gate. So
I was going to ask you, is that the end of the layout, or is there a gate back there?
yeah, no, there's a gate immediately to the, well, it's open in that photo. You'll probably see in later photos how the gate works in conjunction with this scene.
Yeah.
A lot of clamps you need when gluing up something like this, you know.
Oh my goodness.
It's I use Pro Weld, and it's a very good glue to use when you're doing styrene, but everything had to be just clamped up and accurate. Not built in place, Roger. No, it was actually built in my workshop. Although certain things like this, actually, that is my workshop. What am I saying? That's the outfeed table of my tabletop.
I was going to say.
That's what that wooden thing is. So that answers my question and yours. That's showing it built in the workshop.
So basically, you do a little bit in the workshop, take it out to the layout, kind of size it in, and see how it fits.
Once I had the floor where I wanted, fitting into the chiseled out grooves, I was able to build the rest of it, I think, in the shop here. And once in a while, I'd take it out there and just kind of look at it and go, "Oh yeah."
And AJ's got a question here. Where do we find the step-by-step article?
So Model Railroad Hobbyist is an online model railroad magazine. And there's a free portion of it and a paid portion of it. And my column, which is called Getting Real, because it's about prototype modeling, is in it usually appears a couple times a year. And it's in the paid version of it. But it's like, yeah, I don't know if it's $3 or $4. I mean, it's very, very affordable and very worth it, I think.
No, it's
if anybody has trouble finding it, let me know and I'll post a link.
Yeah, cool.
In this photo, some of the stalls had been blocked up with concrete blocks. So I'm using some leftover pieces of my favorite concrete block material, which is that Monster Model Works concrete block stuff. It's the best I've seen.
That is awesome stuff.
It looks right and it finishes correctly, and I can buy it in big sheets. This next building that I'm working on right now, you know, they're 12 inches long and I think 8 inches high, the sheets. So you don't have to have all those joints that you're trying to hide, like if you're using pipe stuff material.
Oh, tell me about it.
Highly recommended.
Yeah.
So in this photo, we're well along. You can see everything's kind of been painted, and you can see that the rails are put in place. So those rails are live. You can actually run right into both buildings. And I had to devise removable roofs just in case, you know. So each building has a removable roof.
That's a good idea.
That's a really good idea.
That's the Walters 2-stall engine house, and it has a flat roof, but I converted it into a I guess that's sort of a mansard roof, right?
Right.
So I had to add on to it. So this is a finished photo. So from the rear, you can see how the roof's a little ajar on the shop. So you can see some space at the top of the wall there. So there are magnets that hold it in place. I think I need to sort of put my elbow on that one. But
press fit.
Yeah. So this is just the weedy background of the two buildings. That little track that you see that sort of truncates at an angle, that's an extension of the track that would have crossed the Susquehanna River into West Pittston. So the P&E kind of ambles down there and terminates there, and then the next session they come back, quote unquote, from West Pittston.
Oh, that's cool.
The pieces on top of the roundhouse roof are where I guess back in the steam days, those were built up into some sort of vented clerestory, and they were removed and just kind of plated over in the non-steam days. So that's what I'm representing there. I actually still need to weather the roof of the roundhouse. I haven't gotten around to it, but you can see how that building ends in the aisle, and that's where the gate is. You can see the threaded rods that hold up the that level from the staging level below.
So obviously you must have photos of what the modification was done to that back shop building.
Oh
You
yeah,
know, yeah, because I mean, this isn't what that photo looked like at all.
correct.
You know what I mean. So, when did you say they made that modification? Like sometime before your modeling era, obviously, right?
Correct. My best guess is that there was some structural problems with it because basically what we saw sticking up before is just ornamental. You know what I mean? It doesn't
Yeah.
Right.
doesn't perform any function, and it probably needed repair, and they just lopped it off and capped
Took
it
it
with
off and capped
concrete.
the roof. Yep.
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
So that's what I was trying to replicate there.
Wow, that looks awesome.
So SP Steve has a question. Did you add lighting to the buildings?
Not yet. That's down the road. Things like lighting and signaling and things like that are things that I'll do once I don't have any bare plywood.
There you go. And
Maybe a year from now.
and then what was the material that you used to create this, I guess, overgrowth here
That's
in the
my
back?
standard super tree material.
No
It's,
kidding.
Yeah. Not all of it ends up being a tree, and
Yeah.
and the whatever's left over that has the little leaves picked off of it, I literally throw it into a box, paint it flat black or flat brown camo color,
Yep.
and then I grab handfuls of it and dip it into the 50-50 matte medium and water mixture, and then just kind of roll that around in the foam tray and throw some foam mixed in with it. Just lay it on a sheet to dry. So that kind of material is extremely useful in my area.
Yeah, no
That's
kidding.
awesome.
That's a real nice way to reclaim like all the cutoffs and stuff from your super trees and
Right.
I was
And
just
put 'em
going to
to
say
use.
that. Pick up all your pieces, you know.
yeah, that's
Oh,
that's
yeah.
another tip. Save everything.
Yep. Now, I mean, when you're making super trees, you have to sort of resign yourself to the fact that 25 to 30% of it you throw away. I mean,
It's
just not worth,
waste. Yeah.
not worth
Yeah.
your time to try to make all of that useful.
Yeah.
And from the front, we have a
Oh
rebuild
man.
in there, but you can see how the little reinforcements were added, replicating the metal
Yeah,
pieces.
Boy, that looks really cool. I love how this brick
It's
turned
just
out.
amazing, isn't it? So if you get
Yes.
the color you want, and then just some fast and final, and there it is.
That's funny. The fast and final, I'm telling you, it is saving me a lot of heartache and pain with paint.
It's great stuff.
Yes. All right. Ooh.
Across from the Roundhouse was this little office, and in fact, this was my first use of the monster awnings. Believe it or not. This end of the yard. This is OX yard, and the rest of the yard is Riverside yard. But this is up at what they used to call Falling Springs. So I was able to find a prototype picture that showed this little building, and I said, I gotta model it, and my favorite thing there is the little MU stand there,
Yeah.
Although I like the little bench too. The picture, the picture actually showed me a lot of stuff. So I said, why not model it? One of the trickiest things was cutting down one of the awnings to fit to look smaller, which is what I saw on the prototype picture. I think that's coming up. I think I gave you the prototype picture too. Maybe not. Well,
That looks
maybe
awesome.
maybe it's a later one.
That looks amazing.
Later on, I found another prototype picture that had that blue compressor tank out there, so I added that after the fact when I got the new picture.
Isn't that just amazing?
That looks so cool.
So we do have a couple of questions here. So John Baxter is asking, so how are you applying that fast and final, with a putty knife or your thumb? You used a good old Mark I thumb.
Yep. It washes off.
It does. It is. It's fairly safe to use.
If I was doing a big area, I might use a slightly damp, very small sponge.
Yes, I would agree with
curtain
that.
wall building, which is not in this presentation, but you probably saw it on crew call. I was using the sponge on some of those brick areas.
It just looks great, Mike. I like how you got the Conrail units just peeking out too. Oh,
So here you're looking down into the yard, and you can see how the rest of it was all done. So it was like criminal not to finish this end.
yeah. That's just beautiful. Oh yeah, there's the P&E.
Yeah, there's the P&E. Sometimes
Oh,
I
cool.
cheat and back it down in there, because it's almost like a little scenic staging track, if you will.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea a lot. Oh, and then here's the gate must be closed then behind you.
I have a hard time telling if that's true or not in this view. I'm hoping I have another picture that shows that a little bit better.
Nope.
Oh, there's the prototype picture of that little office. So you can see how it's got the smaller awning and the bigger awning and the MU stand and the fuel tank and the yellow stripe. And I just thought, got to capture all of that.
And the bench.
Right.
Boy, look at the debris here.
Oh, I know.
They just threw it anywhere.
And again, that's the kind of thing that I'll enjoy doing as time goes on, just adding things like that and never really running out of fun things to do on the layout. If you looked at the model shot, there's some of that there, but not really that many.
That looks like the floor of a former building.
Probably is.
Might be. Yeah. It might have been another shed.
Like a foundation of something like that.
Burned down or something.
Oh, that's super cool. So that's the pretty much the summary of Pittston Yard, both ends then, huh?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. In the future, what I'm going to do, again, based on some pictures that I got, I have one picture that shows that's like if you're down in the engine terminal looking that way, looking north, you see the big coaling tower looming over everything.
Ooh.
And I have a spot on the other side of the aisle that'll be in the right perspective to position it there. But it's a pure scratch build, and it's going to be a complicated thing to build. So I didn't want to get bogged down and on that. But that one of these days when I feel like a real project with a capital P, I'll tackle that. I've got a Tichy coaling tower, and I'm going to use a lot of the parts and guts and things from that for the I have the sort of the outside rails so the car can go up and dump into it. So I'll utilize a lot of that stuff in it. But beyond that, it's pretty much a pure scratch build. And the tricky part will be scaling it. There's a lot of angles on it.
It sounds like a fun problem for you to solve.
Yeah, right now it's just a cinder covered flat area on the other side of the aisle.
So let me ask you a question to because like these scenes and these buildings that you've created are very unique. And they make your layout stand out. The little yard office has its own character, and then that roundhouse. Like, what is it? Was it just the dedication to the prototype, or how did you make the determination? Like, man, that's it. I have to model that. Like,
so it's kind of probably a combination of things. So, if you're a prototype modeler, you're trying to recreate certain scenes. Yeah. Now, I've had visitors to the layout that live in that area. In fact, that R&N engineer I was talking about, Tony V. Jr., he came here one time with his girlfriend and his dad, Tony V. Sr., and many of the pictures that I used actually came from Tony V. Sr. because he was tramping around down there back in the day.
Sure.
But what was cool was just watching him walk around the layout, and he says, "Oh, look at that! I used to fish right there." I mean, he was able to identify things from his youth based on how I modeled it. In many cases, based on pictures that he gave me. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or other people. So, for me, as a prototype modeler, my interest is in, for the most part, recreating what we call signature scenes, recognizable things that stand out, things that locate your prototype in a particular area. Now, is every square inch like that? Of course not. When you walk around rail fanning or looking at things, not everything leaps out at you, but things that do. Like when I went down to DuPont Junction that time and I saw that amazing, bridge over a bridge over a bridge over a stream. I looked at
Right.
that and said, how can you not model this? I have to model this. This is a signature scene, and
Right.
that really, the need and the desire to model that determined in large part how I did the connective tissue between the old layout building and the addition, and that was I just get a lot of satisfaction out of that. Now, the area that I'm going to be working on coming up is the Pocono Northeast, and unlike the Conrail section where I had detailed ZTS maps that showed me the exact track arrangement in my era, which is an amazing thing to have as a resource. I don't have that for the DNH, and I don't have that for the Pocono Northeast. I'm basically going by stuff I see on Google Earth and Google Maps and my personal visits down to that area. I'm just seeing basically what's left. One of the nice things about the crew call group is that sometimes I'll talk about something I'm going to model, and photographs will come out of the woodwork. Like
They
Isn't
they
that
just
funny?
suddenly pop up,
they
isn't it?
just appear, which is a tremendous resource.
I've had that happen also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah,
So, but for a lot of the P&E, again, if somebody gives me a good picture close enough to my era, I'm probably going to model that little scene pretty faithfully. And will I worry about, again, the connective tissue to get from point A to point B for another one of those scenes? Not so much, because it's mainly nondescript, trundling along through backyards and grassy areas, and I'll be able to capture that well enough without specifically modeling it. Then when I get to the next thing that I've got a decent photo of, I'll do that faithfully, I mean, it's a model railroad. You're building it in a basement, so sometimes you have to give yourself a break in certain ways.
yeah, I suppose.
Now,
So
when I
that-
was in Malvern, there's a guy that used to work for the PNE. He ran trains on the Pocono Northeast back in the day. Paul Rice, nice guy, and he had sent me a spreadsheet of all of the consignees and what they got for products and the frequency of serving it and what town they were in and all that. It was just mind-bogglingly useful, and certain questions had come up in our operations, and my buddy Dave said, "Gee, too bad you couldn't find out about X." And I thought, maybe I can, So when I was down in Malvern after my clinic, usually people come up and they chat with you for a while.
yeah, right.
And a Conrail guy came up and talked to me, about super nice guy, and gave me some information about the signals. And Paul Rice came up. I'd never met him in person, so he introduced himself. We got talking, and when I said to him at one point, I said, we're looking at the tracks and we see no sign of a runaround, but you had to have one, right? And this was on the West Pittston trackage, which is like a combination of former Lehigh Valley and former DLW trackage. And he said, no, he said, we would shove for miles, which is why we needed a caboose.
Oh man.
What an interesting thing to know, and then try to replicate, in your operations. Another thing he told me, I told him I was getting ready to build Milazzo, and I said, you really didn't have a yard per se. Basically, they had an interchange track in Pittston, and they could get their interchange in Taylor, and they had a couple of tracks up in Avoca, which I think I modeled it as 3 tracks, just because you need some tracks. That's sort of their visible staging area. But I think in that day they were down to not much. And he said we would get a cut of cars for Milazzo, and we would try to figure out what we were going to do with them. We would have a meeting in the morning, and we'd say, all right, well, we could stick a couple of them on this siding, and they would basically spread them out all over the place on
Really?
unused sidings, just to have a place like storage in transit for the calcium chloride that Milazzo uses to make the ice melt. So little anecdotes like that are just gold and they make your operating sessions very interesting. I got tons of stuff like that from Mike Bednar when I was talking to him about Conrail operations back in the day, you know. So I've been fortunate to get a lot of just lucky little combinations and introductions from some really nice people who are happy to help out, you know, which I appreciate immensely.
It is funny. Mike, were you going to say something? You look like you wanted to jump in.
Yeah.
Go,
talking
please.
about when I was working in Manitowoc, I'm working back in Green Bay for the time being right now. But we would make a 7-mile shove, and we had a caboose. There's no runaround.
Right.
Now, once in a while, we would pull out there because depending on what customer we had, the one customer had a track mobile, and as long as all we had were cars for him, he'd pull them off us. So we would we'd work with him, and he'd just tie on, and
sure,
I'd make the cut, and my conductor would go and help him. He would help him get over to where he needed to be, and then we'd come over back in there and tie on to what we needed to pull, and we'd leave. But
you don't always have a caboose. Sometimes you get a guy hanging off of a car for miles, right?
No, we always had a caboose because Manitowoc has a dedicated caboose. So it's but we didn't always use it because, like I said, sometimes we'd pull out there. But if we had cars for the fertilizer plant, now we're shoving out there. We might shove 4, 5, 6 cars 7 miles, and we had 4 customers on that line. So we might have 4 customers to do. You'd shove all the way to the end, and you'd start working yourself back.
Make sure you block that thing right, otherwise you're in trouble, right?
Well, it depended on what you wanted to do and what you were doing at the other end. But yeah, you could fudge it a little bit, but it for the most part, that's exactly the way the Rockwood Spur out of Manitowoc is. It's just like the P&E. There's no runaround,
right?
You know, and
I mean, this is how we're going to operate this little branch line, which is very different from how the rest of the railroad operates. You know, so that too is going to be fun because it's like something completely different now that you can incorporate into the general scheme of things.
Yeah, not only everybody always thinks, modelers especially always think, well, there's got to be a way to turn around at end B. You know what I mean? When you go from point A to point B, there's always ways to get around everything at each end.
Sometimes you have an engine and a cut of cars on each side of it.
Well, we used to go down on our own main line. We'd take the caboose down because we'd have to shove 1.5 miles back up through town because there was no runaround.
Yep.
So we'd shove just to do one customer. We don't do them anymore, but we used to do a customer called Red Arrow. They made liquid smoke. So we'd take, your liquid smoke bottles come from Manitowoc. You didn't know that?
No.
Yeah, Red Arrow makes liquid smoke. Yeah, amongst
delicious.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a gross place.
When the caboose is leading like that, does he tell you when to blow the horn and things like that?
No, nope. I don't have to blow the horn if the caboose is in the lead. I don't even have to ring the bell, except for when I start and stop.
What?
Nope. No, there's no reason for it. There's no reason for it. It's not the leading edge of the movement. The leading and on a CN, you have to stop at all the unprotected crossings. You've got to stop, get out, flag the crossing.
Okay.
Come across.
So your conductor's out flagging though. He's
flagging these crossings. Yeah. That's why we're happy we don't have to do it because there was like 22 crossings to go over. So it would take an hour just to come back up the cross.
I bet.
You know, it would take forever. But it's an operation.
This is real railroader stuff. That's very useful.
It's operational. It's operational things that model railroaders don't always think about. You know what I mean? Right. And then when you're doing it with your P&E, that was what made me think, cried out loud. For 6 years, I did that exact thing out on the Rockwood Spur.
Yep.
You just shove out there and shove back. You know, and it's cool. It's fun. But, you know.
So when you think about my operational scheme, you've got the Conrail mainline trains, and there's basically one every 12 hours, north and south. Yeah. That's all they had. But then they ran a slew of locals out of Pittston Yard.
Yep.
You've got D&H road trains. Actually, D&H ran at that time more road trains than Conrail did on that line. So I've got the ability to run several D&H trains. There's interchange between Conrail and D&H. There's interchange between P&E and D&H, P&E and Conrail. On the north side, there's the little TMSL short line that basically trundles for miles through nothing to pick up one or two covered hoppers and then heads all the way back down to Monroe. And so I've replicated that by largely a long trip through.
That sounds like my type of railroad
track, and it's just an SW1 and a covered hopper,
That's awesome.
So that's Mike's bread and butter right there.
That's my kind of stuff.
At some point in the future, I've got a neat grain elevator to build, almost like a little diorama that's just in a spot by itself, and that job runs, I don't know, every third or fourth session depending upon traffic, but it works in conjunction sometimes with the Conrail local out of Sayre that does that area on the layout. So I guess my point is there's all kinds of railroading on the model railroad, which was all theoretical until I started running the railroad. And obviously I built it that way because I thought it would be fun, but actually it's like way more fun than I thought it would be, which is kind of a cool thing to have happen,
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've seen guys actually like institute like fusees on their crossings and flagging and
how do they do that?
I think they just hit a button and a light comes on, like a
little LED,
like an LED that flickers.
I like
to
it.
simulate the fusee in the middle of the crossing.
Yeah,
which during the daytime you wouldn't typically use that. That's more of a nighttime or dawn and dusk type of thing.
Yeah,
but I mean you could use them during the daytime. I have stories about that too, by the way. But
I'm sure you do.
Nothing I can talk about on here right now.
Yeah.
But,
that's second section.
That would be during the
that's the after dark
drinking pre-show portion.
Yeah, but
beer drinking.
But I've seen. I think even Lance Minheim in one of his books talks about making that. If I remember right. Yeah, I was just gonna say Lance Minheim. Yeah, talks about using creating a fusee look for flagging across.
I know who to ask when I want to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. You got a in right there already.
There you go. So there's a couple of questions that came up, and actually I'll put this one up here for you. Is so did you build your layout for prototype operations and or to be visually prototypical? So what was the driving purpose? Was it to look good or to operate good?
Yeah, the inference in that question is that you can have one or the other, but trust me, you can have both.
Okay.
To me, it's got to look right, and it's got to operate realistically. Otherwise, what's the point? And I kind of cut my teeth up on Mike Confalone's proto freelance Allagash Railroad, and he's always done it that way. Looks great, runs great. Prototypical operations throughout. It's just it's a proto freelance railroad right down to the last bit, and I really learned a lot about operating up there before I finally figured out what I wanted to do. But I think that his approach and my approach are very, very in harmony. I think we both agree largely on what looks right and what should happen. Each of us has probably our own different things that we want to be fussy about. He's the kind of guy that'll literally cut the smokestack off of a Bowser RS3 and then destroy an Atherin shell to get the smokestack from it because he didn't like the taper, the 3-degree taper on the Bowser molding. You know what I mean? I looked at that and I said, you're nuts, right? I mean, but it's important. It's important to him. He sees it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You know what I mean? So that's why he went to that length. And I'm sure every time he looks at his modified Bowser, he's very happy with it. And that's really all it comes down to. So I guess to answer that question, I put a lot of effort into trying to figure out how the prototype operated in that area. I think I've mentioned before in other shows how I used to drive around down there trying to figure out what the heck was going on down there. It's just a spaghetti bowl of tracks everywhere. And I eventually found a very, very highly detailed PDF map that when you print it up, it's gigantic. And I've got it up on the wall. And it was a Conrail map. I think they needed to figure out what they were doing there too. So that map enabled me to actually get it in my head how everything was related. And then, it's the conversations with the prototype people, the questions I got answered and all that. I figured out how it operated. And I thought I can build that. And then I based the building of it and how it looked on observations and pictures. That's prototype modeling.
Yeah, that's it.
Basically, the operational scheme is what they did. If they did it, I'm interested in it.
So then the follow-up on the operation, do you do like car card waybill or timetable train order?
About that actually.
Yeah.
On crew call, I actually had posted some pictures of the card waybill system that I use. There's all kinds of systems out there, and I keep going back to Confalone, but I mean, a lot of this I learned from him back in the day. He uses a loaded in waybill and an empty waybill, and in between sessions, he has to swap out and refile a lot of cards.
Yeah. And
his waybills are very detailed, and they're detailed because at the time when he devised that system, that's what was important to him. I looked at him and I thought, what do I really care about? I care about reporting mark, reporting number, card type. Is it a covered hopper? A little LO in there, right?
Yeah.
I want to know the city it's going to. I want to know the consignee. I want to know the route. I want to know how it gets back. Pretty much all I care about.
Yep.
So for me, I was able to devise a two-sided card that does everything I want. And basically, on each side of the card is a field called gateway. And for our purposes, the gateway is staging destination. So if it's Allentown Gateway, you know which way to route that car when it's ready to leave.
Yeah.
And there's 4 staging yards. There's Allentown Conrail, Allentown D&H. There's Binghamton D&H. There's Sayre Conrail, and those are the main staging yards. Each of those are train length staging yards with 4 tracks each. The Allentown one being 8 tracks, you can kind of use some flexibility between D&H and Conrail according to need. And there's little staging areas too. There's several little P&E staging tracks or destinations that we use because cars have to go someplace.
Yeah, right.
But in all cases, it's perpetual operation. So the only thing I do in between sessions is to take a train that's coming into staging, and I'll restage it in such a fashion because the blocking order is important, right? Depending upon where it's going. So I'll swap those blocks. I might put different power on it, or I might not, because you might not see that train for 6 weeks. And by that time, I assure you, you can't remember that you saw it 6 weeks ago. You know what I mean? Because there's been so much action in between. So my New Year's resolution this year, which I'm attempting to get to, is to swap out
power.
It's
a little late.
To swap out. Well, I've been busy.
True.
But and I'm back into ops a lot now.
Yeah.
You go through a construction phase and then you get into an ops phase. So I'm in the ops phase. So the goal really is to swap out consists at most every 92 days so that, you're not just looking at the same combos all the time. But you know how it is. You set up a 4-unit consist and it runs well together and you've got the lighting and everything set the way you want. You don't necessarily feel like breaking that up every time you operate. You know what I mean? Right. So if you don't see it for 6 weeks, not that big a deal. It's running the opposite direction. So there's a little too much of that. That's one of the things that I'm going to mess around with more maybe as we operate more moving forward.
Yeah,
You're-
simplify.
No, you've got a handful of coal trains on your layout too, right?
Well,
Do
I
you-
wish I did actually.
'Cause I was gonna say, do you do fleet, like a single car card for a unit train where it's
Yeah, if it's a so okay, so let me elaborate on that a little bit. So a train will, if it's a local, there's a card for every car in that train because you're doing something with each car.
right?
On a road train, you'll typically, let's say it's a Conrail road train. You'll have a block from a hoopany, and that will be 5, 6, 8, whatever cars for that particular destination. And we usually clip those together, so you're not having to flip through the whole stack to figure out which are hoopanies. And then the other cut will be interchange for Pittston, and you're always picking up and dropping off in Pittston. And on many trains, you'll have a trailing cut of cars that are run through. So really, those are the only kind of cars there are. Run through cars don't have cards; they just run through. Lately, there's been so much traffic in so many areas of the layout that are now finished that we haven't had much room for run through, and some trains have no run through. So it all happens organically, and it literally is never the same exact way twice, which is I hadn't expected, but it's kind of cool also because that's like what happens on the real railroad. It depends on orders and factors beyond your control. I'm a little surprised actually that it's that way, and sometimes I'm not even sure why it's that way, but I'm fine with it. You know what I mean? So I just kind of go with it. So if it's a unit train, sometimes a D&H train will not have work at Taylor and it's just running through. No cards for that. So the cards are really only for things when you're doing something with the cars.
That makes being an operator a lot easier. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
right.
Right. And when you think about it, if you're not doing anything on the layout with the cars, what do you need a card for?
Good point.
It's just going from basically staging to staging. It's traversing the railroad. You know what you're doing. You know where you're going. You don't need a piece of paper to tell you that.
Yeah, right.
Getting back to the coal trains, there's still pieces of information that I'm trying to find out. The two of them are, I've seen pictures of, I don't know if you're on the, I'm trying to think who it is now. They put up little snippets of railroad videos on Facebook. It's a group that I'm on. I think they sell videos, but they'll include videos that you can minutes of. Can't think of the name of it offhand, but
Not like Model Railroad Academy or
it's not that. But
Trackside Modeler or
you're gonna make me look. Hang on. But they'll have snippet. They'll have videos of, let's say, D&H trains in my era on my line, and I'll see 86-foot boxcars.
Like Green Frog Productions or something like that.
That sounds right, doesn't it?
That's Heath. I can't take credit for that. That's Heath.
Like they're in my feed all the time, and now I'm scrolling through it and I'm not seeing it yet. But I mean all the time.
Yeah.
But I guess it's not that important. What is important is I want to know where the boxes are going. Where are they coming from? Where are they going? Because if I could justify running them on my D&H trains, I'd love to do that. I just don't know where they'd be going. I mean, obviously they're going towards Detroit, right? And they're probably coming from somebody who's making some component. But I can't, until I can kind of prove that they existed in my era and my line, I don't want to do something that's a complete work of fiction. By the same token, I've got plenty of pictures of coal trains in Pittston Yard. I can't get any information as to where they were coming from or where they were going. Part of me thinks maybe it was a detour. They're going to the Portland plant, track work or something, because it wouldn't normally go that route. It's the only thing I can come up with, but nobody's been able to tell me that yet. So if anybody knows out there, please let me know, because you get that information. And the people who know that stuff, they're going away.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that knowledge is disappearing. So
I operated on I might get this guy's name wrong. Ken Borowski. Does that sound right? From Minneapolis. He's got a Clinchfield Railroad in Enskill.
Yep.
And he showed me, he says, this is the best thing that I ever got. Somebody gave him 1 month, and it's the reason why he models when he does. He has a book. It's that thick, and it's old 1970s dot matrix computer stuff. And, with the white line, green line, white line, green line type stuff. You open up the book, and sure enough, here is Milwaukee Road 510 something something from Procter and Gamble, Green Bay, Wisconsin, to such and such a location on the Clinchfield.
Right.
And I'm sitting here going,
gold.
Wait a minute. And they were like, that one page. I said, did you know this page that I was coming and this page was like this? He goes, no, this book is full of that stuff. He goes, I just picked a random page to show you. And it must have had 30 cars on it.
You could curl up with that and
you could read line for line. It told you where it came from, what railroad it ran on, what, all this stuff, and where it went on the Clinchfield. Right. And it was an inventory, an audit of every car that was not a coal train.
Yep.
Because coal trains in every single car.
Even they're not keeping track of every car in a coal train.
Nope. Right. No, because coal trains went from here. They went from this mine to this power plant.
You might care about how many cars and what the tonnage is.
They didn't care about any of that. It was just point A to point B. That's all it was. They just cared about.
Another buddy of mine who's a railroader somehow had come across, I'm sure he told me how, and I've long since forgotten, but gave me a stack of waybills for shipments out of Mahoopany, Procter & Gamble, to some warehouse in, I think it was probably Vermont. So it explained what all that traffic was about and what cars I should be using. And did I offend Mike in some way?
No, he's going into the archive. So Mike's going to go into the archive now.
Okay.
This is what happens. Like left
the podcast.
Yeah, you said Mahoopany, and that was it. That was his trigger word. And now he's gone. I'm just joking. But like it's outstanding that the digression that we went on just to add those little details. Really, we talk about the signature scene, but these are the little nuggets of gold that add that plausibility to the scene, that give it that
plausibility is a good word for that. Absolutely.
Give it that, I don't know, that extra something that really makes it just stand out. Like this is the story behind that.
So what you got there, Mike?
So Mike has something in hand.
I was given to this by a conductor from Gladstone, of all places. And this is on the Milwaukee Road, exactly like what we're talking about. Here, this is a daily yard. I'll see if I can do this. This is a daily yard check. This is for Beecher Lake.
Nice.
Which is just outside of Pembine, Wisconsin.
Okay.
And it's a hand. Now, these are from September 3rd, 1968 to October 31st, 1969.
Is this something the conductor would use or fill out himself?
There was a station agent. The station agent would fill these out. And it told 48.
I was thinking Peter Dinklage when I hear that word.
What does it say? 48 empty Milwaukee ore cars stored at Beecher Lake. Station number on October 29th, 1960. So at Beecher Lake on the little stub spur there, they had 48 empty ore cars from the Milwaukee Road just sitting there stored.
So they could find them again, I guess.
I mean, it was
they're probably still in the woods out there.
There's a list of cars here from
site.
Yeah.
There's a list of cars here at Pembine that show like pulpwood guns and paper box cars. And it would be Sioux Line. There's a Frisco car that was up there. PFEs, MDT, which would have been
Merchants Dispatch.
Merchants Dispatch,
clothes, right?
It doesn't say what it is exactly. It just says it's an empty.
What
So
year?
this would have been October 8th of 1969.
69. Wow.
PFEs. So it was probably a boxcar or a Reaper of some
They
sort.
had more than one kind of car back then. I don't know. I think FlexiFlows were around in the late 60s.
Yeah, I mean, it's just here's a whole bunch more for beach or lake. It's just every single page you turn is some new. Here's 51 ore cars, empty new ore cars stored.
I'm pretty sure
New ones.
MDTs back in that era would have been RBLs of some kind.
Yeah,
The MDT FlexiFlows didn't come until 90s.
because they were with two other PFE cars, so
Yeah, that
it
makes
probably
sense.
would have been
Then
a
they
Reaper.
were probably
Yeah,
an
that makes
RBL.
But I mean, it's just reading through this is just the
You're reading history is what you're reading.
You're reading
Yeah.
history, and it's something where if I wanted to go back and say, I'm going to model northern Wisconsin on the Milwaukee Road between these dates, right here is my Bible as to what cars I'm going to buy, what cars I'm going
to. That needs to be digitized and saved for posterity.
to. I tell you what, I also have. Oh,
So Mike,
Wait,
this is the part of the show where Mike shows us stuff he has.
Show
But
them.
Mike, that's a brings up a good point. You should digitize that, being a superintendent for the Milwaukee Road
I know
Historical.
I know, especially since I'm the
Association.
superintendent for that division.
Yeah, you should be doing those types of things.
In your spare time.
Yeah, right. So
We'll do a podcast episode where we just watch Mike scanning paperwork.
So from 1986,
raise money.
In 1986 and 1987, my dad, before he went to work for Wisconsin Central, worked for the Escanaba and Lake Superior, right?
Jeez.
Here's every train he ran on that time.
Wow.
Do you
On the
have
ELS.
paperwork like that, Mike? For
This
your
is-
D&H and Conrail stuff?
I mean,
I wish I did. I've got that stat. I mean, I do have a lot of Conrail resources. I've gotten some amazing freight car information from Conrail. There was a guy that used to work for Conrail, and he sent me a printout of their actual roster in my era, locomotive roster.
Yeah.
So I don't have to wonder if a particular engine was on the railroad at that time. I can just look at that. I put it all into a spreadsheet. It's like, there you go. I consult it all the time.
It's funny you should mention that, because we had friend of the show, Luke Lemons, right? He's kind of like our resident Mike
I follow
Rose
too on Facebook. He's doing some great stuff.
and he's got
if he's watching, and I love the pipe loads, Luke.
oh, he's not listening, and if he is, I want to have a little conversation with him because I want to know exactly.
I know
he's probably up in the middle of the woods someplace, trying not to get eaten by a bear on his way back from Powers.
Oh, he's on the train, right?
Yeah, him and Justin are on the train.
Yeah,
they're always complaining about that. They're always like, well, you guys could try to do it on this day so we could watch. I'm like, no, there may be a reason why we're doing it.
You can watch the replay, right? It's a
right
forever on YouTube.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
But yeah, this stuff is in information like this is invaluable. I never got as close to hitting somebody in my entire life voluntarily as I did when a yardmaster one time said when they tore down the Green Bay Depot at the old Milwaukee Road Green Bay Yard office at Oakland Avenue. About 3 weeks later, he came and said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you. Did you know that we took a bunch of file cabinets out of that depot?" And I said, "No, what'd you do with them?" He goes, "Oh, we threw them in a dumpster. They're out in the landfill somewhere now." He goes, "They were filled with paperwork from the Milwaukee Road." Dude, I just about went across the table and strangled them.
You know, more of that has happened than anything else.
I
Unfortunately,
know, but I'm
Yeah.
sitting here going, oh man, it's just like
we've gone a couple hours here, and I know that we've got a few more pictures of the.
yeah.
Of the
Sorry about the rambling. So
I didn't know it's
No.
okay. I didn't know if anybody had any other questions before we showed that other stuff. Is everybody good question wise?
Yeah, I think we're pretty good question wise here. We've been kind of calmed down in terms of questions, but I think
Okay.
it's some of the other stuff here we'll bring up. I have another care package from you here.
oh, a care package
Is
is
it the
always
Tony
good.
K stuff?
It is, yeah. Did you want to show that or the Ken
Sure.
McCory
No,
stuff?
we'll do that, and we can finish up with Ken's, I guess.
Okay, so this is going to be a nice little treat for us here. Let me get the. Oh man, I am just miserable today at technology, and I'm working it all day long.
You really?
Yeah, I'm just
That's why I gave
struggling.
the pictures to you to share.
Yeah, yeah. Well, every dog has his day, I guess. This is
I know
mine.
when I went out to Tony's house, I was surprised at how far out in the middle of nowhere he is. He is in
Really?
the boonies of New Jersey, boy.
So Tony Custer's in New Jersey area.
Yeah, he's like out in Western Jersey. As it turns out, it's not far from like the original home of Karsten's Publishing and Railroad Model Craftsman and all of that. I mean, it's apparently Bill Schomburg lives 4 miles away from him, which had I realized at the time, I might have just crashed his place too. I haven't seen Bill in a while. So this is what I mean about his early use of backdrop photos to extend a scene. You know, he's modeling Indiana, so you've got all of these crossings. Every 2 feet there's another diamond on his layout with an interlocking tower. So very like a pioneer in the use of backdrop photos to give a scene some depth. And this is what I mean about the whole layout is just full of opportunities to just get down close and take a picture like this.
Yeah, that's really sweet. He's modeling the. Let me guess. It's the nickel plate, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I took this pic just to show what a nice scene that is, but also how there's the upper deck right above it.
Oh yeah. I mean, and while you're there, like this is really what you're seeing. You don't see that other.
Yeah, I mean, if you step back and you're just looking at the room, then you see more of the two things. But it's not designed for that. It's designed for you to, I guess, follow your train around and be focused on what your local scene is.
Here's a cool detail of an old right-of-way here.
We don't do enough of that.
No, we don't.
That's because it's taboo. You know what I mean?
Look, another diamond.
Yeah.
What's this? Another diamond.
And a diamond that's not a diamond.
That's right. But not all of them, by the way, have rails all the way through. I'm pretty sure that if you look closely, you'll see.
Wait a minute, that one's not a diamond. That one's not even.
They will be at some point.
Oh,
they're simulated diamonds, I'm guessing.
Yep, eventual diamonds.
They're just coal nuggets right now, almost diamonds.
But it shows you how you can operate when you don't have every little detail in place.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, there's a question right there from Jeff Hacker. Go back to that last picture. I believe those are coke ovens, correct?
Yes.
He was wondering what those round brick blogs are.
Yep.
That's a cool scene of the depot there.
Really evokes a certain time and place.
It sure does. This guy's laying down on the job.
Yeah, maybe the other guy hit him for throwing something out.
Yeah, maybe there was a bunch of files in the cabinet there that got chucked out. But another good use of the.
I don't have any people on my layout, and it's because people look okay in a picture, but when you're standing there, people shouldn't be frozen in time. So my vehicles tend to be parked, and my people tend to be either sitting inside someplace or not even there. And I won't model a waterfall. That beautiful scene, huh?
Isn't that awesome?
I love that bridge.
Oh, wow. So what was it like being at his layout? I mean, is it just it? I'm assuming it's just
It's like
like,
drinking from a fire hose.
is it?
Well, because it's a lot, it's a big layout because of the two decks. I'm sure he told me what the track miles were, and it was part of the stuff that just overwhelmed my ability to remember everything he said. But it's a big layout, and 16 operators. I was, from in my layout, you follow your train. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're roaming around the entire place. You're following your train, and I have a feeling that a lot of his people are stationary operators. They're towermen or whatever. So, when you're and it's all timetable operation, and that's I have no frame of reference for that. I went to Bill Darnaby's one time, and at Tony's invitation. This was for, I guess, a Naperville meet trip, and I didn't know the first thing about what I was doing with timetable operation, and they just said, "Oh, just go out and run a train." And next thing I know, I'm in a cornfield meet with Tony because I hadn't, followed the timetable. But I mean, it's just can't really relate to it. You know what I mean? It's like another time, another thing. It's not really what I do. It was interesting once, but it made me very nervous.
Mm-hmm.
It made me very anxious.
And then running doesn't become fun if you're worried about making a mistake, right?
Well,
I mean,
fun is what you consider fun, right? He had a lot of fun describing to me. He's got so much stuff there. He's got old phones on the sort of, what do you call that thing? You pull them out on the, help me out here. It's like an old-fashioned phone.
Like a signal box.
Yeah.
No, like on my boom mic type thing, or like on our boom mic.
It's like a lattice kind of a deal.
Like a switchboard.
Yeah, kind of.
It's like a telescoping. It telescopes. It
Right.
kind of or type of thing, right?
And the whole place is just full of stuff like that. And I'm looking at the layout, and I'm looking at infrastructure. I mean, it was just, he's got these maps on everything. It's complex because it's a whole territory to learn, and it's not a small one.
Jeez, this bridge scene is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a signature scene right there.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I like the bridge in the background that he used on the background photo with that. You see the bridge along, and you have the river, and then you can see the other bridge in the background. So, I mean, that gives you a sense of depth and, right there,
And like I say, you saw these pictures in the magazines. He was a pioneer at doing that kind of thing.
Yeah. Jeez.
Just, good underbrush.
Dispatcher's scissor phone, Tom Klomoski says.
Of course, Tom would have the answer to that one.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. He's a 5-timer, I think, on the show, Tom Klomoski.
That's
my goodness.
Spare board.
What is this?
That's people being assigned to jobs.
Oh my goodness.
That's the way they used to look in real life too, though.
Are you serious?
Yeah, they would look like that in real life. Yeah, you'd have. My name was a little orange ticket. My name was in orange.
I'm quite
because
certain
I was
that's
an
a
orange
prototype
ticket.
model.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. I've never seen it like this.
Yeah. We had little hooks on the Green Bay and Western, and your name went to the job, and that was it.
Yeah, this is a magnet board.
Yep.
That's so cool.
So this is how he did some of the level stuff. So you kind of crawl under something. That's what that railing is on the left. And then you've got the carpeted step there. And when you get up and stand on that, now you're in a different town that you don't see from the aisle. And that's all of his staging underneath. Huge, like vast staging yards.
So is it kind of like a mushroom then?
Yes.
Wow. That's a cool turntable and roundhouse.
Well, wait till you see the aerial of the big one.
Yeah.
But there's just these little small town things all along the whole thing. So what's neat is it kind of gives you this feeling that you're going somewhere.
Oh, look at this. I love this building.
Yep.
That thing's cool.
Nice and nondescript.
Right. And this is Indiana,
Right.
Illinois, Ohio.
Right.
Those are everywhere
Midwest.
trackside.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
Lots of grain elevators.
Yep. Nailed it. Looks like he's got the corn cob chute there.
Right.
Yeah, that's not mouse droppings. That was intentional, I'm guessing.
He told me what he used for that, and I forgot.
Looks kind of like wild rice.
Or bird seed.
Maybe, yeah, it does.
Like Niger, maybe?
Yeah.
Niger thistle?
Thistle seed.
Thistle seed, maybe?
Whoops, went too far. Nope. Now I'm making a mess here. Here we go.
Oh,
Hey,
another interlocking.
hey, another diamond.
Yep.
This is a cool depot.
Yep.
Now, do these signals, are they all operational?
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
And he's adding all kinds of technology to it also.
Is he really?
Yeah, he's got people to, helping him do certain things because let's face it, I mean, the guy's in his 80s at this point.
Yeah, right. Look at the wiring here. This is an interesting little, I guess, scene of the belly of the beast, right?
Yeah, unforgiving.
Yeah.
Obviously, you'd crop that, but
Yeah.
crop it into something like this.
Oh, I think yeah, right. Yeah.
Nickel plate road.
That's cool. Little handcar shed there. That's awesome. Oh, look at the perspective on that backdrop.
That looks awesome.
Right.
Blends right in. That's so cool. There it is.
This is an iconic scene on his railroad, and he actually on the bench below, he's got the prototype picture that was taken. That's him and his dad.
Right down here in the foreground, right?
Right.
That's so cool.
So
I've seen
kind of a bucket list thing for me to do. I'm glad I got to do it.
Yeah, oh,
You see what I mean about the big roundhouse? And even he couldn't do the full circle. You know what I mean? So you see how much room a whole roundhouse takes up. It's amazing.
That's what Luke did the same thing, Mike, with his. Is he's got like 8 or 10 active stalls, and then you get to the aisle, and everything is like half an engine width.
Right.
There's barely, and then you keep going, but you can still see into the engine house. That's awesome. That's fantastic.
So this was like the first thing that I saw when I walked down the stairs, and it just kind of goes. I mean, I think it's like 60 feet long or something nuts like that. So I just had to take that shot because that's sort of like what you see when you first walk down there.
That is so cool.
That is incredible. It's, whew. You don't know what to say. It's so vast. Oh yeah, that coaling tower.
Right. You can see what I mean. There's a lot going on in a coaling tower.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
You see this little thing holding the skewer?
Yeah.
Such a good idea that I've already been building them for my layout. So obvious. They're always either stuck in the card pockets or laying on the lip of the sorting shelf or worse on the layout. And I just thought that's simplicity in and of itself.
Yep. A piece of
holes in it.
Yeah. And then paint it to the fascia color.
Yep.
I'll be darned. That's awesome. So that's it for the Tony Custer highlight reel. So I mean,
I was dizzy when I left there.
I was gonna say
I would be too.
Yeah.
How was the experience on that? It's just he seems like a really gracious guy, yeah.
He's like I said, if you could do a mind meld with that guy, I mean the stuff he knows is just, it's ridiculous, really.
And then we have one more, I guess, layout to discuss here. We have a few more photos from Ken McCory's layout. Right.
Now I've known Ken a long time. Ken has what I would characterize as, to my knowledge, the largest privately owned model railroad. Now I'm probably going to be deluged with people saying, no, so-and-so has one bit. Trust me, this thing is gigantic. It's in a purpose-built building just for the railroad. And it's 2 stories.
I'm afraid to even. Okay, see, that's what I was afraid of.
So the story of this, now every time I go to Ken's, I got to know him in the beginning because it was a Conrail layout. And all of the guys, except him, that operated the layout, and keep in mind, I think he said a crew of 26 or something like that, they were all Conrail employees. So the layout was very, very faithfully built and more importantly, operated like the real thing. So that drew me down there like a magnet. And then Ken, over the years, backdated, and he had a PC era layout for a while, and then he went back to ERR, back into some Steam, and he had hinted to me that there was another move that he had made, so I couldn't wait to see it. So when I get there, he's basically gone proto freelance with it. So he's got his own railroad over much of the railroad. And I took a picture of this because this is the stairway going up to get from ground level to the layout level. And he realized that this was an opportunity to build, more layout. And he built this entire thing on a block of foam, and then carried it upstairs and planked it in place. Not unlike what I did with my junkyard, but just everything with Ken it's like the scale of it is mind-boggling. So that's what I saw when I walked up the stairs, and I said, geez, Ken, you could have warned me a little more. The whole tour of it was stuff like that.
Yeah. So basically what we have here is his staircase to come up to the room here.
Right.
Underneath the grain elevator, that's where you walk in.
Yep.
Oh,
wow.
No wasted space.
Now, the next picture, I think, shows something a little different. So this is downstairs before I'd even gotten upstairs. Yes, Ken's inside of a locomotive simulator cab. And you can run a train on his layout from this cab with video. So it's like a locomotive simulator.
Oh, my gosh.
Why is the air cut out?
What's that?
I said, why is the air cut out on the automatic?
Oh,
that's how authentic this thing is.
Yeah, I'm like looking at the looking at the automatic. I'm like, oh, he's got the brakes set there. Cool, that's all set. I'm like, wait a minute, why did the air cut out on there?
It's probably my fault. I don't know what I'm doing. So, okay. Well, so these are not in any particular order, so we'll jump around because I wanted to show. But this is fine. This shows you the stairway up and the other side of that flour mill there, that grain elevator. He's doing more with Buffalo now, so that's what that represents. Anybody who's been through Buffalo knows how many silos they have there, even now.
Good golly. Another picture of it there.
I thought these were cool. These are the amp meters and voltage meters for each zone, and he's got them all over the place. And it is a useful thing to use when you troubleshoot. It's not easy to get an accurate voltage reading off of a DCC layout. So these things do it.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
That's a good idea.
Yep.
Luke, you got to get some of these. I know you're not watching, but you got to get some.
Yeah.
We got to browbeat Luke into watching the replay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He will.
There's the electrical cabinet on the back of the simulator.
This is unreal.
I have something else to say. Why is it an isolate? I can see I can pick out everything because I do it every day for a living.
Just stop.
My job.
You're ruining it for the rest of us.
Sorry. That's why my wife doesn't let me watch train movies with her.
Oh, I know. I pick them apart too.
Unstoppable.
This is another, again, that Buffalo influence. He's added all these other grain mills and what have you to better represent parts of Buffalo.
Wow.
The scale is unbelievable.
You can't even imagine. I probably should have taken one big photo of the whole thing, but
like, how deep is that scene right there? Is that 4 feet?
Something like that, yeah.
Oh, how do you?
I'm sure there's hatches and pop-ups and what have you.
Jeez.
Wow.
It just goes on and on and on. It makes Tony's look like a little layout. I mean, it's just ridiculous. There's
Oh,
the
yeah.
cab.
There you go.
They built all of that out of plywood, but like the other things are real, like the horn and the wipers and the headlight and the number boards, all that stuff up from a real locomotive. Grab irons.
That's sweet. I gotta
That was the
check the
first thing I
chat.
saw when I walked in, and I said, "Okay, the last time I was here, you had a Conrail high rail vehicle here." He says, "Oh yeah, I saw that."
Oh,
Throttle pockets, good idea.
yeah. These are some of the things that you have to think about if you're building a big layout. Where are you going to put all your stuff?
Exactly.
And
You
put
notice
it.
all the bench work is painted. It's
Yes.
neat as a pin.
Yeah. Here's the hot seat.
It's pretty good, you have to admit.
Yeah.
Now, what do we have down low? Ken decided that I don't have much to do during the pandemic. I think what I'll do is scenic the staging level.
No.
So
What?
Yeah, he's scenic the staging level.
Wow. Look at the size of this industry on the top here.
There's a staging yard inside of it.
Of course.
Because of course, yes.
Oh my word.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
So what's this a picture of? At this point, I'm laying on my side on the floor, and I'm looking at a helix that he added to make another staging level below his old staging level. I'm not making this up.
Is that laser cut?
Yeah. It's some kind of kit from, I think, Germany.
Oh my word.
What the hell?
And I have to admit, I looked at that and I thought, huh.
Does he have that on cinder blocks?
No, I think those are foam blocks, he said.
Foam block.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Mike, you said, huh? And are we
Because who couldn't use more staging? I mean,
yeah.
I've been thinking about this ever since the trip.
I can imagine so.
Just percolating.
Oh my goodness.
Now,
That is
the 6.5 foot area, there's only like 3 places on my layout that you could do that in. But one of them happens to be just right, which makes me think,
the potential is there then.
yeah. He maintains that we don't do staging right. He wants to do staging such that a train will leave the layout and you won't see it for 6 months.
Oh.
It'll just the layout and be in staging all the time. There's his part of his private road there.
So does he, I mean, he must have just miles and miles of staging yards then.
Oh, you can't even imagine. You can't even imagine. He'll have like 30-foot long, 12-track staging yards underneath the layout. It's just mind-boggling.
Oh my goodness. So how long were you at Ken's place then to take all this in?
I was, each of these visits was probably a couple of hours, and then after that point, just you can't absorb anymore. You just have to leave.
I just got to go. I'm sorry.
Well, I'd like to stay look at some more stuff, Ken, but I'm not gonna. So this is a steel mill that no longer fit on his layout, which was downstairs, and it's for sale.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh.
Wow.
Hashtag not sponsored.
Right.
Call Ken.
And we're back to the beginning. So
I
just thought the viewers would get a kick out of seeing some of that stuff. So that's what I did on my Pennsylvania adventure. I visited a couple of amazing layouts and gave a clinic and drove home in unbelievably bad torrential downpour the entire way home for 5 hours. Might have been the worst drive I've ever taken, ever.
Ah, that must be you had to be exhausted by the time you got back,
Oh,
just with that type of drive.
it's
Oh,
that white knuckle driving, you know.
yeah.
Fortunately, when I got to about the Connecticut Rhode Island line, it kind of tailed off, and then by the time I got home, I was kind of normal.
Yeah. So what's next for Mike Rose then? Like
Well, I
we
moved right along to Malazzo Industries. It's 5.5 feet long,
okay.
and it has a hidden track that goes through it, and
Yeah.
it's going to be, I think, a very cool industry to model. It's got a couple of different elevator legs and roof lines with all kinds of angles, and it's just I've already begun it. You probably saw a couple of the pics on
On your Facebook.
on Crew Call there. So I'm moving right along on that. Trying to think. I got a little bit of travel going down to Florida and visiting the kid and the grandkid, and
Yeah.
next month. And but interspersed with all of that, we're running a lot of trains these days. Some people who have. I had a guy come over a couple of weeks ago who hadn't seen the railroad since. To put this in perspective, he said, you were planning on getting a pool table. And I thought, oh my God, that pool table is what I got rid of to build the Mahoopany Peninsula. And then I said, geez, that was a couple of wives ago, Wayne. Long time. Because I've been with my current wife, Karen, for like 17 years. So gives you
Yeah.
an idea how long he hadn't been here. He saw a couple of changes. That was he posted a bunch of pictures on Facebook that I posted pictures that he took, just from his perspective. So we're trying to get some new people qualified on the layout. I'm not looking to do, you get beyond 5 or 6 people and it's like herding cats. It really is.
It is.
It's just all you're doing is managing people. You don't get to run a train yourself. You just you're like a road foreman. You know what I mean? It's I like to run a train during my own op session. Go figure. So with 5 or 6 people who know what they're doing, it's ideal. And a lot of times we'll do a 3-person op session. There's a guy that only lives maybe 45 minutes away from me. So a lot of times it's my buddy Dave and Jim and me, and I'll just say, hey, what are you doing Tuesday night? And they'll come over and we'll run some trains.
That's sweet. So the article that we talked about, the Getting Real column, with the stuff that you showed us tonight, is that already out on?
Yes. Yeah. And I'll post a link to your group for it.
Yeah.
People can find it, and it downloads as a big PDF, and very, very detailed article. Like every step of the way is documented. So
Yeah,
for anybody considering, if you're looking for actual like technique stuff, and a lot more finished pictures and all of that, it's probably worth it just for that.
Yeah, I would. Yes, I agree. I've been getting the Running Extra subscription now, and it's well worth the extra $3.
Yep.
So
It's not a lot of money. I mean, you go out and buy a magazine, and it's not $3.
no, it's not. They're expensive these days. That's for sure. So, Mike, what'd you think of all this? This was something else, huh?
Well, typical Mike Rose fashion, does not disappoint.
Of course not.
Really, you know what? The whole Roundhouse perspective stuff was really cool. That was really, really. I mean,
I had a ton of fun building that. I really did.
And that's one of those things where if you're gonna have something like that, you gotta really just dive all the way into it. You know what I mean? And just kind of do it right. Have a reference. Have that, and just you look at the picture, you look at the model. You look at the picture, you look at the model. Next thing you know, everything looks the same.
So many projects, I didn't really. They never come fully together until the very last moment. When you get the weathering in place, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, now it looks like it's supposed to look.
Yeah. Okay. So I have one really big question to ask about this whole
Just one.
situation, all of it. Just one. Have you ever gone and been doing a project, like any one of these projects like you've done, like we've seen tonight or some of your other ones, and you've gone and said, well, I'm done working on this for tonight. And you've gone and walked away, you went to bed, and the next morning you walked out and said, I think that's done. Have you ever had that moment where you're like, you didn't even realize you actually finished it, thinking that there was something more to do to it, and then you come back to it, and you're like, no.
I'm going to say no to that, but with the caveat that done is not really the right word. So I like to get a project to what I call presentable. I'm satisfied.
Nice. I like that word. That's a good word.
I can live with how it is, but there's precious little on the railroad that I consider quote unquote done, because I think I would enjoy, once I get, no more plywood, everything's pretty much in place. At that point, you just pick whatever spot you feel like working on.
Yeah.
Improve it a little bit,
Yeah.
I don't see a scenario where I'm demolishing anything wholesale like I used to do in the past.
Layout kaboom.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of where I'm at right now, right, Andy?
Term,
Yeah.
Until you figure out what you're doing. I mean, I figured it out the other day. I've been building model railroads for like over half a century. It seems like a lot when you put it that way, So I've made every possible mistake you could think of and a lot more. And you learn from your mistakes. You can't be afraid to make a mistake. That's how you learn.
Yeah.
Just learn from it. Don't keep making the same mistake over and over. Right. So if you don't repeat your mistakes, but you make a lot of them, you learn a lot over enough time, So now when I do stuff, I pretty much know what I'm doing, and I've got the methodology in place. And it always starts out with, I got to get it in my head, right? I mean, if it's not up here, I can't have it. I can't create it, That doesn't mean that every last aspect of it is completely thought through. But from a process standpoint, from an end result that you're trying to achieve standpoint, if I have the process in mind, if I have the end result in mind, I can see my way through it without tripping over myself for the most part, So it does feel like I gain momentum in my ability to start something and see it through over time. If you look back, like I look at what I have down there right now, and it's basically 6 years worth of work. And I look at that and I think, wow, that's a lot of production for 6 years compared to what I did in the 14 years, before that.
Yeah.
But it's exponential, I think. You get to a certain critical mass and it's like, I got this, and that's kind of where I was about 6 years ago, I guess. So not the entire basement was built in 6 years, but all of the connective tissue and everything in the addition. So probably 1,000 square feet of model railroad. I mean, it's a lot.
That's huge.
Yeah,
it is.
The whole thing is 1,800, less the sort of central core where the utilities are and all that, stairs.
Wow.
So we've been doing kind of this last 3.5 months here on the show. We've been doing a prototypical model railroading theme, right? And we get to the end of the show. I asked Luke Lemons and Bob Rivard and William Sampson and Tom Klamoski. I ask them, like, if you were to give some advice to someone who's getting into model railroading and they wanted to be a prototypical model railroader, what would be that one thing or that one piece of advice to get started down the right path that you would give them? I know this is a very unfair question at the end of a podcast.
Reasonable. No, it's actually a very, very logical question. I mean, there's different kinds of modeling, as you infer with the question. So, proto freelance is something that's freelanced but done prototypically.
Yeah.
So it looks right. Prototype modeling is you're recreating to whatever extent you decide is to your satisfaction, actual prototype scenes, cars, locomotives, operations, however you want to define it. It's your personal definition. For years, I was always known as the freight car guy. Like I really like freight cars. And
Yeah.
I spent many years writing articles and doing stuff on prototype freight car models that I did. I'd see stuff and I'd model it. And that's back when my prototype was a moving target. I was modeling what was there now. What I found was at one point you got into the wide nose era and the graffiti era and the intermodal train era. It wasn't working for me, and Conrail ended and I became a period modeler. And then I discovered my prototype area and I said, boy, that area was coolest in the early mid 80s. That's the era I want to go with. So I kept going backward until I found the sweet spot for what was coolest in my era, in my area. So if you're going to start out prototype modeling, pick a prototype. Pick an area that you want to model,
Yeah, right.
When I stumbled upon my modeling area, I drove around in it and I thought, this looks like a layout. You get steep wooded hillsides and narrow areas where the road and the railroad and a river goes through. And I just thought, I can model this area. And what I liked about it also was not everybody and their grandmother was modeling that area. I mean, there's plenty of Pennsylvania-based layouts, but I had never seen one, and I haven't seen one on my line. You know what I mean? So that was attractive to me. But if you're going to be a prototype modeler, you got to pick your prototype first and foremost and visit.
Yeah.
Pick an era, get photos, get it in your head, get a feel for it. When you do that, that kind of drives all your decision making from that point on. And in terms of first time builders, don't be afraid to make mistakes. You're gonna make mistakes.
Right?
I still make mistakes. They're just new ones.
Yes.
That's like, oh, okay, we won't be doing that again. That kind of thing. Except maybe hitting my thumb with a hammer. Done that more than once. Always sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we never learn.
Well,
right.
Never learn.
Sometimes it's just, oops. That's less of a mistake than you hit enough nails. Eventually, you're going to hit your thumb.
That's true.
Numbers.
That is a number. That's right. That's right. I used to work in construction, and that was a once a month thing. I'd always either cut my finger with my utility knife or smash my thumb with my hammer. So
safety first.
Yeah, well, sure.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no.
And the guy that drew the building plan, how am I supposed to get my hammer in here?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, I think that was fantastic advice to give someone to start out. Mike, I did want to give you a chance. Is there any other points that you wanted to make this evening about the stuff that we've shown tonight? Any final comments? And then I think what we'll do is we'll probably tie down for tonight here as we're approaching the 3-hour mark. So time flies.
Well, I do shut up sometimes, but if you get
no
questions, you're going to get answers. Only thing I would say is that hopefully this is cool to do, but
yes,
I have my own group in my own podcast, and you guys do a much better job with your podcast than I do because I'm too busy doing my own thing. But I do put out podcasts once in a while in the Facebook group that was ostensibly in the beginning to sort of announce the podcast and promote it and all that. It's actually become like an ongoing layout blog of mine, So I have a feeling that most people who are on my group, and it's up to like 3,600 members now. It seems like once photos start to go viral, I'll approve 40, 50 people a week. It's crazy how it gets going after a while. But I think most people that are on it are following the ongoing layout. There's Malazzo. They're following the ongoing layout, progress. And I'm posting pictures all the time. So for anybody that enjoys, sort of an iterative blog of what's going on, it's a good place to follow along with it.
I agree 100%. And you guys should absolutely go to this Facebook group and follow Mike and his modeling, and his podcasts are, very informative and very fun to listen to as well. So I know I catch them every time they come out.
And a notice just popped up on my screen. So 6 people want to join the group.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe
There
they're
you
all
go.
second section people.
Let's hope so. But I've been following Mike now for a long time, and I can honestly, say that the information that he puts out on his group, I mean, the Fast and Final. This was a Mike Rose special, right? This is something that I learned from him, and I use it religiously to this day. So you're gonna get a lot of good techniques. You're gonna get a lot of good information, and I don't think there's anyone as enthusiastic about the hobby as Mike is, flat out. So
there's lots of them. I'm just
I not like you, Mike. The way you talk, it's just I could sit here for hours and hours and hours and just listen to you, talk about your layout, how you're building it, the prototype, all that stuff. So
well, if it conveys that I'm enjoying it, then I'll call that a win, because it's what I like to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All that other stuff is just a means to an end, right? We talked about that, I think, in the pre-show.
In the beers in the pre-show.
I just want to play with my stuff. That's it. I've always been that guy.
Yeah. So I did
summer vacation end,
Yeah. So we do have Mike's Facebook group in the chat. I also have it in the show notes as well. So make sure you check out Mike there. And then, and then the other thing is the MRH column. It's always good and informative.
It's worth it.
It is. It really is. So couple administrative notes for the second section. We do have to do a Rocky Mountain Train Show recap with Mike at some point. So we're going to probably do a little extra show sometime either this week or next week to get that in, because Mike's got a lot of cool stuff that we need to talk about that happened at Rocky Mountain. It's definitely a train
to recover.
Yeah, Mike is still trying to recover.
I've been not feeling very well lately.
I have to cut back on going to shows too, because it's a lot. There's the travel, and the shows can be intense because it's just constant.
Yeah, I went. Yeah, Mike, I went from 625 feet above sea level to 5270, right up to 8,900 because I got off the plane, got my rental car, and went right to Moffett Tunnel.
I hope you didn't do any jogging.
No, but I did get I didn't wear a hat up there, and it was bright and sunny, and
you probably got smoked.
I got sunburned. My whole hairline was sunburned. But anyway, it was awesome trip. There's a lot to talk about. So
thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. It's always a lot of fun.
Thanks for coming on, man. Anytime.
Sometime in the fall, if you need 2.5 hours to fill it.
Mike, we would love to have you back on for sure. And I know that
standing invite, man.
Yeah, you have a standing invite. Anytime you want to come on, you let us know, and we'll make room for you. That's for sure. And the section crew loves you as well.
Yeah.
So that's going to probably wrap it up for us this evening. Again, we're out on Facebook ourselves, Second Section Podcast group on Facebook. And then if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel yet, please do so. It's a great way to support us here at the Second Section. I do want to thank everyone out in the chat tonight. Great camaraderie, good questions, a lot of fun conversation going on there. Do appreciate you guys keeping it model railroad related and having a good time. You guys are what make the show what it is. So again, from Mike and Mike, and I want to thank Mike Rose again for taking the time. We'll all see you probably in a couple of weeks. Have a good night, everyone.
Take it easy.
Night.